Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Well, South Carolina's done it. They have beaten Caitlin Clark and Iowa, and they have completed a perfect season and won the NCAA women's basketball title. Now, on the men's side, UConn is not undefeated, but they can go back-to-back as champs. South Carolina winning 2 out of the last 3 championships. Can UConn make it 2 in a row? They've got Purdue tonight. We're going to spend some time on those games coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. Right now, though, a look back at the weekend. Not a great weekend. The Jazz lost twice, and RSL had the lead late, gave up a goal, and takes just 1 point. They split the points in Minnesota after a 1-1 draw. Here's RSL head coach Pablo Mastroeni after the game.
Seemed like you guys were just kind of off and running there in the first half. Chicho got that early goal. What do you think maybe kept you guys from being able to get that second goal tonight?
Again,
Recording in progress.
Playing games away from home, it's kind of the opposite of Vancouver, right? Where momentum shifts and they're willing to play a little bit man-to-man. And again, when they're really willing to do that, I think we just need to do a better job of stretching, right? And threatening their shape. And I don't think that we weren't ball dominant as we'd like with the lead. And I think a big part of that is exploiting the space that the opponents are giving us. And that's
get rid of this thing.
Having said that, I think we created two or three really good chances in the second half, right? Chicho had one, Andres had one off the bar, and then we had a 3v2 with Andres in the middle of the field, and it just didn't come off. So having said that, I think, we put ourselves in position to get that second goal. But I think there's a lot of things that, just looking at this game that we just need to tighten up. And I think every game offers an opportunity to learn from. And this is one of them.
You guys were able to use all your subs tonight, and the first one to come in was Fidel for Diego. It seemed like maybe a bit of frustration for Diego at times tonight. But what were you seeing from him, and maybe what are some things that he can improve on from this match?
Yeah, I think, again, everyone has tough nights. I think, in particular in the first half, I think, again, when our attacking players are dropping into those pockets, I think what we could do, we can continue to improve on is playing quicker. Because when you're pulling out a center back, 2 things need to happen. Once the center back is out and comes into the midfield, any combination essentially breaks the press. And we need actions ahead of the ball because now we're isolated 1v1 across the back. And so I just think that, some games, your touch is on, your technique is good. And some days it's not. And I just think it's just one of those one-off things. And when your first couple decisions don't come off, it's often hard to get back into that rhythm. When your first couple actions in a game come off really good, you start to really exude a lot of confidence. And I just think it's that. But again, the effort that Diego put forth from a defensive standpoint was fantastic.
Yeah, and then kind of on that note, I want to finish off with that last goal. Obviously, you never want to concede late in the game. And it was that kind of more of a matter of they were just kind of knocking on the door and the dam broke in that moment. Like one of their chances was going to go because they were just pressuring so much.
Yeah, I think so. You put the ball in dangerous areas enough. And again, I think at times our defensive shape was a bit compromised. I think they did a good job of finding space between our midfield line and our back line. And we'll go back and view that. But I think you're spot on, Caleb, where, I think Zach had a fantastic game. He kept us in the game. He managed crosses. He managed set pieces really, really well. And I think in a lot of ways, if it wasn't for Zach, we wouldn't have got the result. So, I think, again, we always want to put pressure on the ball. The problem with that is when you're not getting pressure on the ball, then you're forced to drop and cede space, and then it becomes a vicious cycle, right? And so the few times in the second half where we were able to get pressure on the ball, we won the ball in dangerous areas, and we were able to build counters from it. So again, I think it was, the goal that we conceded was just a matter of momentum. I think Zach did everything he could to keep us in there. But again, I think there's a lot of moments that we'll look at and work on for next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, coach, on that goal, I'm earning that reputation as the guy who doesn't talk about the goal or the assist, but the header won by Justin to set it up, I thought was maybe the most important, the kind of the biggest play of that moment. Just what is it about Jake Glad kind of being in that position, winning that header, just going way up is, and then the way he kind of starts that counter attack, like just what was sort of behind that moment of magic for him, I guess.
Yeah, I think Jay Glad is a very much a front foot defender. And again, if we want to press higher up the field, we got to have center backs that are willing to step high and make plays. And Sean, I think it's great that you noticed that. Oftentimes, the center backs aren't brought into the equation, but unless he makes that play there, then we don't spring an attack and we don't go forward. So, I think he's a huge part of everything we do and the way we want to play. And obviously critical on that goal.
And then just kind of big picture, it's really easy to see this game as a 0.1 being on the road and whatnot, but just because of the way that you guys led for so long, does it feel maybe a little bit like two dropped, or can you still see it as a 0.1 on the road?
Again, I think if you watch enough football, as I'm sure you do, you see, for example, yesterday, it was Chelsea against Man U, right? And they're up 3-2 with 5 minutes left in the game of injury time, and Chelsea come back and score two. So this game, for as much as it is, you're leading for 75-80% of the game. This game affords you no opportunity to take your foot off the gas, and really from a mental perspective, you can't shut off. And so whether they scored in the 30th minute, 60th minute, 100th minute, it feels safe the closer you are to the end of the game, but it's never safe.
Kyle Ireland, you're next.
Yeah, Pablo, you've had a couple of these late goals this season. How do you take those kind of disappointing finishes? And even though you get a point like you just talked about, how do you take that and like turn it into a learning opportunity where it's like, hey, we didn't get the 3, but we still got the 1. But it's happened multiple times this season to the point where you don't want to see it again. How do you make that a learning opportunity where it kind of becomes a positive learning experience as opposed to a habitual thing?
Again, I think the way we talk about internally is every result is an opportunity to learn from. We don't get too high when we win, because again, within that winning performance, there's obviously moments that as a group we got to get better at, and so it doesn't hide the areas that we need to improve in. And the same when you draw late in the game. I think the important thing for us is and it's so easy to say as a coach, right? Guys, we got to be dialed in here in the last 10 minutes of the game. But these guys are running, 13,000 meters. These guys are, and your muscles use the same energy that your brain uses, right? So when you're fatigued physically, your brain isn't as sharp as it is when you're at full tilt. And so what we'll talk about really is decisions in those areas, right? So when the ball's in the wide areas, can we have a better approach from Emeka? Can we get better communication from a couple of other guys? And on the weak side, can we get our outside back coming across and dealing with a more dangerous player as opposed to someone that's beyond the goal? So we'll talk about it from a tactical perspective. But at the end of the day, these guys are humans, and when your muscles start to fatigue, your brain unfortunately has to go with it. Hence the reason why so many goals are scored late in the game in football.
And then real quick, just on Chicho's goal, he's just on a hot streak right now. Can you talk about what allows him to be in the right positions at the right times? Because, it's not like you see every, striker in this league have the kind of stretch that he's on right now.
Again, I think that's why great players decide games. They just have an intuition. They have a knack. Obviously, we work on the final third phase, but really as the play's developing and Andres is in the wide area, he knows a cross is coming. And so he's constantly scanning as to what area he wants to attack. And Andres puts in a great ball. So again, like Cucho as well, Chicho, the best strikers in our league have a knack of being at the right place at the right time, and that's what makes them great players.
Carson, you're up.
So Brody and Bodie have been battling for that right back spot all season. What are you and your staff like? What makes that decision on who starts at that right back spot?
Well, again, I think it's all dependent upon previous performance. Obviously, Brody's played there the last few games. Bodie's been comfortable playing there, but he's been playing as our right mid in defense and our wing back in the attack. And so with Andres coming back, just to keep a bit of cohesiveness within the group in that line, I think is important. But again, I think we have a week of training. We'll analyze our opponents and I think the most important thing for us is to make sure that we're honest with our assessment with each individual as to where they stand. I talk to them weekly about what the plan is for the week, given our opponents and given, how we finished the previous game. And so there's so many factors that go into that. But I think they've both been great. They both have done a fantastic job. And, we want competition in every position in order to raise the standard in every position. And I think we have a team to be able to do that.
Awesome. And you guys recently have been struck by a little bit of an injury bug. Especially with like Eric Holt and Marcelo Silva, what's the plan on handling that?
Well, I think we're looking to bring in another center back. Marcelo's injury is long term. You have to be at least too deep in that position, for competition, but also because, we're going to run into a part of the season where we're going to have a full string game. So definitely looking to bring in another center back and then, bringing up guys from Monarchs to make sure that we have we have guys that can participate as their scouts and see how those guys do as well, and see how they perform in training to see if we have another center back in house. But both those injuries are different. Marcelo slipped on the ball and stretched, and that was as almost tearing his hamstring off the bone. And then Holt was stretching for a pass when it was really chilly outside. We've analyzed it with our sports performance staff and our medical staff. And again, I think in the near term, it's finding a player to come in and, shore up that position.
There's RSL head coach Pablo Mastroeni. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll hear from Will Hardy after the Jazz and the Warriors had a little bit of a shootout in San Francisco. That's next. Stay with us. Good morning. DJ and PK is proudly presented by Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer for 18 years in a row. Well, despite Johnny Juzang's best efforts, 7 of 9 from the three-point line, a career-high 27 points, the Utah Jazz lose to the Warriors 118-110. Here is the best of the postgame show.
Jazz recap here on DJ and PK 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The Jazz fall to the Warriors last night, 118-110. But how about a career high from Johnny Juzang, 27 points on 9 of 12 shooting, 22 of those points coming in the first half. Keontae George had 25 in the loss. For the Warriors, they were led by Klay Thompson, 32 points. He's still got it. 12 of 23 shooting, 6 of 13 from 3. Let's get to the postgame sound and Jazz head coach Will Hardy.
For us, we've talked the last 2 games about winning the second half. Tonight we won the second, third, and fourth quarter combined, and the first quarter continues to be a real issue for us. There's a responsibility to start a game on executing the game plan, understanding who we're playing against, understanding personnel, and that comes with preparation, both collectively as a team and individually. So I do think in tonight's game there was a lot of good basketball that was played. We had some moments where we guarded well. We had some moments where offensively we did a pretty good job against their switching. But the first quarter is something that we've got to address as a team now. We're putting ourselves in a hole, and it creates an atmosphere where you have to be perfect for the remainder of the game to have a chance. It's tough to play that way. It makes the game feel awkward because every mistake feels worse than it is. So the first quarter is something we really got to clean up.
I mean, again, when you look at the score tonight and everything, I know your team gave it its best effort, but how taxing has it been on your club? You guys haven't won in the last dozen games.
Yeah, I mean, losing's not fun. It takes a toll on everybody. You know, we understand there's a lot of work to be done. Our players understand there's a lot of work to be done. At the end of the day, you know, I kind of operate from a standpoint of half the people don't care that you have problems and half the people are happy you have problems. So there's no reason for us to complain. We've got a really good group of guys in that locker room. Everybody is together. We're fighting together every day, continuing to try to help a young team improve. And it's my job and our staff's job to tell them the truth, to tell them the parts that are unacceptable, to tell them the parts that have to be cleaned up immediately, but also to love them and tell them the parts that they're doing well. I think if we give in to the emotional part, we're going to lose some valuable time. And these games right now are very important to us in terms of the long-term vision of our program.
Coach, can you give us a quick thought about Johnny's performance tonight? He looked incredibly comfortable. More than just the outside shot, but driving, scoring, all three levels. But the three was spot on.
Yeah, Johnny's put in a lot of hard work the last 2 years. Coming out of UCLA, Johnny was a scorer. Did a little bit of everything. We've tried to help Johnny transition into a little bit more of a shooter mindset. He moves around off the ball a lot, hunting threes, and then the threat of the three sets up everything else. I thought tonight he did a really good job of showcasing a lot of the work that he's done. In particular, I'm happy with how he was running in transition. You know, Steph and Clay are probably two of the best examples we have in the last 10 years of understanding that although they have the reputation they have as shooters, transition is a great opportunity to get lost. And I thought Johnny tonight did a good job. He kind of got himself going by running and found a couple of catch and shoots in transition. So I'm very proud of the work that Johnny's done. He hasn't gotten a ton of credit the last 2 years because he hasn't gotten as much time with us as maybe he's wanted. But he's stayed ready. He's put the work in. He takes really good care of his body. Johnny is very well conditioned. I think it's one of his strengths that isn't talked about very much. So it's always nice to see a night like tonight where the work pays off.
Coach, sometimes you can pick up the stats at the end of the game and it only tells part of the story. What else did you see tonight that you thought was positive about this team? And albeit a loss, there's got to be some things you saw that you can continue to build on.
Yeah, I think tonight was a night where we showed a little bit of resilience. You know, you get down 20, you get down 18. It's easy to give in and let the game go the other way, but I thought we made some runs at critical times to keep this a game. You know, I was proud of the fight to be there 6 minutes left in the game, down 12 on the road to a good team. I think that shows a lot of growth to me, where they were able to stay focused on what was next, not necessarily worry about some things that had gone wrong before. You know, and that's them doing it as a group. I thought tonight was one of our better nights communicating as a team, coming back into the timeout, and the guys are all talking and solving problems together. Halftime was the same way. So I am seeing a lot of growth in terms of how they're interacting with each other.
Coach, last thing, you've talked a lot about the youth and the fatigue mentally and physically. What did you see in Keontae tonight? You may have mentioned this in your opening statement, but maybe a little slow start. But I thought he pushed through a really hard barrier tonight against a pretty tenacious defense at times. And they again, were physical, but he was able to fight through. Yeah,
I thought Keontae did a very good job of continuing to get to the next action. There's not a ton of times against the Warriors that first action is going to produce a great shot. Steve's done an incredible job. It's a championship team. Like, a lot of guys on that roster have been in those big games, those big moments. You can see it in their communication, the way they think as a group. And I thought that Keontae tonight did a good job of continuing to play as the possession went on. I thought he benefited from some of the things that our team did, where when we did have stretches where we weren't settling early, Keontae was able to get into some after-action stuff offensively. And they test you in that way. It was something we wanted to build on coming out of the Clippers game. The Clippers switch a lot and force you to play later into the clock if you're willing to be patient and really work the defense and see if we can find something great. And I did see some carryover in that area tonight.
There's Coach Will Hardy. Let's now move on to the man of the night. That's Johnny Juzang.
Johnny, talk about tonight. You've waited for this opportunity, and you really took advantage of the situation. You busted through a pretty tough defense, and talk about just the game and what you saw with the 3-ball.
My teammates were finding me early, and I've been doing a lot of good prep work every day with the staff. So, just got it rolling early and found a rhythm. That's something I've been focusing on, just finding rhythm, taking my time with the shot. So the looks were there early. They found me. Coaches trusted me, got me out there. So, that's all.
Coach Hardy, though, just a moment ago praised you for just your patience, that the minutes have been hard to come by for you up here, but the work you've done in the G League is now beginning to pay off.
Listen, minutes, this is what Coach Hardy, he just telling me this maybe a week ago or whenever we're talking about it. And, he's like, all minutes are good minutes. You know what I mean? So any opportunity to get better, to play the game, is a great opportunity. So, every day you try to get better wherever that is. So,
talk about this young group of players. The Jazz decided to really hand it over to you guys. With Keontae and Taylor, and along with Sensabaugh. Talk about, are you guys bonding, building that kind of sixth sense together?
Yeah, I think obviously last few games been a little rough, but through that, we're talking to each other, connecting, and trying to get on the same page so we can keep improving, right? Obviously, we've had some tough deficits, but I feel like everybody's invested and trying to get the group better and more connected, and how can we all find a way out there on the floor?
Last thing, when you lose, it's tough to keep motivated or focused. 4 games to play. What do you want to try to do with this team, succeed in any way?
Get a win, shoot. That's fun.
I like that.
Every night. So, hopefully we can get some wins. Get some wins.
Johnny, thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
Good job. Thank you, my friend.
There is Johnny Juzang, 27 points in the loss to the Warriors, 118-110. That 27, a career high for Johnny Juzang. Up next, the Jazz take on the Denver Nuggets at Delta Center coming up tomorrow night. That game will tip off at 7 o'clock. Pregame coverage begins at 6.
There's the best of the postgame show. When we come back, more on the Utah Jazz with David Locke. Stay with us. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. A reminder, you have a chance to win big every week on The Zone. This week on Win Ticket Wednesday, we're going to be giving away a pair of tickets to see Sam Hunt at the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on August 3rd. Listen to The Zone all day Wednesday for your chance to win. We spent some time with David Locke late in Friday's show. Not a lot on the games right in front of us, more big picture stuff. Here is David Locke with PK and I. What have you observed as we count it down here, the building blocks now going forward?
Well, I think there's a few obvious things. On the offensive side, just numerically, Taylor's, I think, last 10 games is shooting 41 or 42% from three. If he's really capable of being better than a 36, 37, 38% three-point shooter in that range, he becomes a really valuable stretch piece that can impact the game defensively, play enough offensively, and as he develops a little dribble drive game, learns how to steal 2 to 4 points a night on the offensive glass, you can start to piece together really a pretty fabulous player. If you're suddenly taking, call it 5 threes a game, you make 2, you suddenly grab 1 or 2 offensive rebounds, we're now at 10 points, you go get something in transition, you're 12, you learn how to create 1 or 2 baskets yourself a night on something else, and you're suddenly at 14 to 16 points a game. You've got a really viable, who's long and can defend, you've got a viable NBA starter. So I think that path is very clear. I thought what we're watching Bryce Sensabaugh is really interesting. He really was a high usage, not like just the best player on a bad team at Ohio State, a really bad team. And every conversation has been about like, well, Will Hardy has said, what are you looking for out of Bryce? He's like everything but scoring. Like, he's got to learn how to play the rest of the game. He does. That is accurate. But with the current construction of who's playing, like there is an element where Bryce needs to go back into his bag and just play basketball like he's played his whole life. And I thought that's what he did in the last game. He looked super comfortable doing it. So maybe there's a way with him that you're actually now working it back a little bit the other way. It's like, okay, you're actually a bona fide scorer. You can really shoot it. You're able to create some space, and let him just kind of see if he can score it. On the defensive end, they've got to learn. We're horrible defensively, and we've got to figure that out. And then on the intricacies, there have been a bunch of things. There was a play the other night where Taylor respaced to the corner for a three. It's just a respace he wouldn't have done 2 months ago. So you're just seeing plays of that sort where Bryce did something the other day defensively where he got there a pick in a way he just wouldn't have a month ago. You're seeing those little things that are why they're out there and getting 25 to 30 minutes a night and why that's valuable.
Looks to me, just to my amateur eye, that Hendricks looks a lot more comfortable in his role offensively. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was on the afternoon show the other day, and I went down a rabbit hole I couldn't get out of, and I'll try to do it without doing the same thing here today. I do think he looks more comfortable. I wish he was being more impactful. And what I mean by that is actually probably the contrast of what you're saying. It's like, I think he looks really comfortable. It's not urgent. It's not sped up. But he was earlier flying around, going and getting offensive rebounds and impacting the game kind of with his pure athleticism. And I guess the easy one's like, I'd like him to play harder, but I don't think he's not playing hard. So I have to be a little careful with that comment. So I'm about to head down that rabbit hole again. I'm going to stop.
Let me save you.
Came out wrong last time. Yeah.
Just the simple box score numbers, it bugs me a little bit because I think he has just loads of athletic ability, so much. But when it's 18 points and 3 rebounds, I'm happy shooting the ball better because that's what, they give you points for shooting. But I think he's capable of being 7, 8, 9 rebound guy. So to see 3 rebounds and to see 5 or 6 other players on the team who have more rebounds than him, I'm thinking, if Chris Dunn can go get 4 or 5 rebounds, why can't you? Because your length, your size, and your ability to move is very impressive.
So I think he had 2 the night before that. So that we're talking a little bit about the same thing. I do sometimes think on rebounding, it's important to know whether the team got out rebounded on that night. So maybe Chris Dunn stole his 3 rebounds, right? Because
Sure.
Rebounding is a funny analytical number because, frankly, there's probably 40 rebounds a night to be had on the defensive glass, and in the old days, like 5 of them were contested. Now, like 15 of them are contested, and the contested rebounds are the ones that actually matter. So, is he grabbing those? Would be the question. But or chase down blocks or coming over on the help side defensively. Now, it also could be that he's not late on everything anymore. He used to be really late. Like he would read the rotation late. And so then he would have to use incredible athleticism to be able to still impact the play. Maybe it's the flip side. Maybe and I'm not good enough to see this, that he's actually maturing and he's not late on everything. So it doesn't seem as frantic. I don't think that's the case. I think the one thing I get concerned about, and this is like why Will Hardy always talks about like no free minutes, and these are close, is that the instinct of every human is to settle into their job and settle into their role. And I don't want these youngsters to settle in. How's that?
You stayed out of the rabbit hole. I like that. Good work.
Yeah, I didn't with Jeremiah, and I think Sam was on that day. I certainly didn't. I was like in the rabbit hole. It took me like an hour to get out of it.
Are there any surprises in kind of what has turned out to be the back half of the roster? Are you expecting any of those guys to, as far as turnover and change, are those spots available? Are there some diamonds in the rough that we haven't noticed that the team wants to explore more here? Because obviously we're looking at the first-round draft picks.
Yeah, if I'm Phoenix or Milwaukee or one of these teams that's well over the luxury tax so they can only sign minimum contracts at this point, Micah Potter would be really interesting to me. He can really shoot it, and he plays the game the right way. Johnny Juzang, I think, has proven he can shoot. He's had some really big moments. I'd want to see, if I was a scout, I'd want to see him on the move a little bit more. I think we'll get the chances, maybe scarred a little bit. I think it was about this time last year that he finished 3 of 25 from 3. That might not be quite right, but it's close. And so you want to make sure that doesn't happen again. Jason Preston, who was the G League player of the month and was originally drafted by the Clippers and then kind of dismissed by the Clippers. So that'll be interesting if he gets to play tonight. I think is a backup point guard in the NBA. So if I was those teams that have, Denver, Milwaukee, Phoenix, who have the 3 or 4 major contracts, and then you just can't fill the roster with anything other than veteran minimums, I think we have 3 players that people will be really interested in.
How much do you think that George and Sexton are able to play together?
Good question. I think they're able to play together. I think if I was building a roster to win a championship, that would not be my ideal, let's call it 24 minutes a night backcourt. Actually, I take that back. Let's call it 18 minutes a night backcourt. So in other words, probably the first 6, last 6 of the first and second, and then the first 6 of the third, which is what your starters usually do. So could I find a 6'6" guard that can handle a little bit to be my third guard, and then have them, maybe one of them starts, probably, if it depends what that 6'6" guard is, one of them starts with them, and then they play together for a period of time throughout the game, and then they, it's a 3 or 4 guard rotation, and they play some minutes together. I think they could close games together because Colin's such a dynamic scorer, and hopefully Keontae turns out to be a good shooter. So I think they could close games together when it gets just really grindy and you need people to be able to put the ball in the basket. Defensively, that's hard, but late in games, hopefully you're prepared for that.
Keontae, when he struggles right now, how much of this is the NBA catching up to him? He's scouted. He's got to do things different. How much of this is late in his rookie year? The legs are gone. I've heard somebody think that that's kind of the key problem. When Keontae doesn't have a great night, what do you think the reason is? Because obviously that's got to be fixed going forward.
So it's probably, we always ask these questions as though it's one thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's probably a litany of a multitude of things. That's a bad English. It's a multitude or a litany of things. So one is, I would point out that his his numbers when Lowry doesn't play are far worse than when Lowry does play. Mm. So some of it is being the focal point, and he's just not ready for that. 2, I think legs. 3, I think he's rattled. 4, there's a scouting report out on him to pick him up at 75 feet. I've really never seen this before from many guards for a long period of time. I'll be interested to see if the Clippers do it because they're not a particularly high-energy team like that. But those teams that have it are picking him up at 75 feet, which just has to be wearing him out and blowing up his rhythm. And he's got to beat it because if that scouting report exists any longer, it's going to it's too much. He didn't shoot well in college, so there's a concern that maybe the ball doesn't go in the basket very well. He is not very – these are skills he can develop. He is not very good with a rolling big on the pick and roll. He's pretty good with a popping big on the pick and roll, which tells you like that creates more space and lets him kind of play one-on-one downhill off a pick or against a big. But against a rolling big, his number with walk, like he and John Collins are the worst pick and roll combination in the NBA this year. So that's a struggle for him. And the popping bigs, which were Kelly Olynyk and Lauri Markkanen, are not on the floor with him anymore. So what he's good at right now, he just doesn't have a fallback for. And so he has to play with a rolling big. He was actually okay with Omier the other night, and then tonight I don't know what he does because we don't have Walker and we don't have John, right?
No Walker,
Yeah, so,
no John Collins, no Jordan Clarkson, no Lauri Markkanen.
Right. So Omier Yurtseven is starting, and I don't know who our backup center is. And they have two very large men in the middle.
What do you think Lauri Markkanen's patience level is for this rebuild?
I don't know. I mean, he is the number one guy on his team, and if he's like impatient about a rebuild, then he gets to go be the number 3 guy somewhere else. So, or back to what he was in Cleveland. That doesn't seem like that would be that much more fun. And I think he believes in the coach in the front office and what's going on. So, in that sense, and they believe in him, I think they're probably fine.
With Kessler sitting, this question loses some of its urgency, but the whole thing about there were 10 things for him to improve, and he just needed to pick 2 and focus on. What do you think the 2 focuses are going to be for him? Maybe not so much, right now, but over the summer.
I think strength. And I don't know how you work around. Yeah, I think strength. I actually think he's made huge progress that hasn't been talked about. Like, he's making his free throws.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought part of what actually happened to him early in the years, I thought he got reluctant to go to the free throw line. And so he was getting rid of the ball and not settled. So I would say strength, which will put him on balance, and then secondarily, like, a patience when he has the basketball. I don't know how you work on that. But I thought there was a frenetic element of getting rid of the ball for a while this year. It is still carrying over right now and unnecessary since he's made 80% of his free throws over the last month. And so if he can get himself to have a base and be collected, I think then he can start to use he has great touch, and he'll become a better offense player. The last one would just, and I don't know how you work on this, is he's gotten better at setting picks and being an impact on the pick and roll. But that was not a strength at the beginning of the year. I think Jared Allen and Nick Claxton are his model of players who, without a wide array of offensive skills, are incredibly valuable NBA assets and NBA players. And so I think that's what he should be looking at.
Help me better understand that patience. Is it in relation to where he receives the ball on the floor?
So we're probably out of my league. I'm probably not totally smart enough to basketball-wise to get this, but I think my thought is it's a few things. One is I think he's off balance. Like he's been bumped, right? And so he gets the ball and he's got to get rid of it before he travels, or has to put the ball on the floor in traffic and turns it over. That's the first part of it. So that's what I'm saying. If he's like a little stronger and he grabs a board or gets a ball down low and he can settle himself with some strength, and I think that's part of it. Number 2 is I think it looked like to me, it felt like he was just always rushed to get rid of the ball. And if you're rushed, then you can't then get set to like decide what your next move is if you're just trying to get rid of it so fast. Does that make sense?
Well, DJ is the guy who makes sense.
Right. I mean, I think if you watch him, the amount of time when he's getting bounced around, he's on balance, is not as high as it needs to be.
Okay, yeah, all right.
So if he's on balance, then I think that'll allow. I think he has the ability to score around the basket. So think about Omer Yurtseven, who's not have very good hands and is not like an elite offensive player, but he always gets that little hook shot off, right? They don't make it, but he gets that little hook off. Well, it's because he's so strong that no one's able to jostle him out of position, so he's able to get set and then get that little shot off. Walker, that's what I'd like to see out of Walker. Is Walker, he's on a roll to the basket. Someone's allowing him to catch in the mid-post. Now he can put it down once. He spins off the defender, takes the bounce. He's still on balance, and he can finish. Right now, I feel like when he gets bounced, then he's off balance and he can't finish.
That's where I was wondering.
There are professionals who know this far better than I do. And so
is he getting the ball where he needs to get the I was wondering, that's why I was wondering, is he getting the ball where he needs to get the ball? How much is it on him? How much is it on the offense and the folks getting him the ball where he can do something with it, as opposed to what you're saying, and then it's all sorts of trouble for him because he can't really do anything with the ball at that position on the floor.
So the next thing I would say on that is he able to get himself into position to get the ball in the right spot?
All right. Yeah, that's fair.
And that's where I think the strength comes in.
Okay.
He didn't seem noticeably stronger to me this year than he did a year ago, which is what you would like to see, but that might be not what happens in this, which might not be what happens at that age. Like, he might need, we've all had our kids. They all burst at a different time.
Underachieving can really wreck the mood, and it could get pretty dreary emotionally and all that. Has the team kind of gone through all the whatever depression they went through after the trades? Is it dreary? Are they really dragging to the end of the year, or is there pretty good energy when you're around them? What is it like?
If I'm being 100% honest, I have not been around them as much as usual, so I'm going to shoot around here in a little bit and can answer that question. But because we've been home and because we have not had as many interactions, I don't do locker room after the game, I cannot honestly answer that question.
There's David Locke, radio voice of the Jazz. They are back in action tomorrow night. The Denver Nuggets will be in town. 7 o'clock tomorrow night, 6 o'clock pregame here on The Zone. We're going to take a break. When we come back, what is trending? And then SI golf writer Bob Harig at 7:30. Steve Cleveland is talking hoops with us at 9 o'clock right here on The Zone.
It's time to get your morning started with the news you need to know. News update. This is what's trending with DJ and PK.
Chris Paul with his head on a swivel and white tights and a white sleeve on his left arm with a navy blue uniform. Gives to Klay Thompson. Klay takes one dribble to his left, fires, retreats. He's on fire, and he knows it. He's backpedaling like Klay Thompson does when Klay Thompson gets into the zone. 20 for the Cougar. Klay having a monster first half. He works the left-hand dribble off a double stagger right to left, launches into it, three, hits. Oh, he is thrown at a hula hoop right now. It looks so easy for Klay. Keontae on the push. Cross-court pass to Hendricks. Swings to the top to Juzang. Number 6, yes! 6 threes for Johnny Juzang. And Steve Kerr wants a timeout. Somebody guard that man, he says, again.
Highlights as the Utah Jazz lose to the Golden State Warriors 118-110. Klay Thompson had 32 points in the game, 25 of them in the first half. And 27 points, a career best for Johnny Juzang. He was 7 of 8 from the three-point line. He was shooting it lights out, PK.
Look at Yock's total and blatant and wanton disrespect. Keontae George paced the Jazz with 25 points.
He's not buying the Johnny Juzang hype. Not buying it.
Johnny Juzang, how I love him. He's Johnny Juzang.
It's a fun name, and it's fun to shoot the ball like that. 9 of 12, 75% from the floor. Beautiful.
He's the best Johnny the Jazz have had since Johnny Stockton.
Sorry, John Collins. Move over. Johnny Juzang has arrived.
I agree.
Yeah. His previous career best was 19. Lit it up with 27. But it doesn't matter. The Jazz get blown out. No, Jazz get blown out.
What are you talking about?
They made it
7:04 on April 8th. Mark it down as the dumbest statement you've ever made in our 22 years. And today is the anniversary of the 22 years.
22 down, launching 23. Here we go, people. Doesn't matter as the Jazz trailed by 19 with 2.5 minutes to go, and then
Johnny Juzang can't help if the other guys suck.
That's a fact. I agree with that. And while the 27 may not matter a lot to the Jazz, it matters to Johnny Juzang, who would like to be in the league next year.
How I love you.
Remind some general managers what you are capable of.
Johnny Juzang would like to be in the league? Like that's an issue, a question?
He is shooting almost 40% from three in his limited playing time this year. But that's a very good number. Jazz are off today. Tomorrow night, they welcome in...
They've been off for weeks.
That's also true. They welcome in the world champion Denver Nuggets to the Delta Center. 7 o'clock tomorrow night. 4 games left. This is the next to last, the penultimate home game. DJ and PK.
Hashtag NBA.
Working on Mobley with 3, right elbow with 2, steps back, his jumper, buries it! Paul George with ice in his veins, Clippers by 2!
Chest it to McCollum, not much going on here, back to Z with 5. Gotta go, hard to the rim, throws it up, got the roll with a left hand! Oh my heavens, Williamson! He went through the entire Suns defense.
Shot not quite there yet, but you could still feel his impacts. Here's Brunson in the paint, floats it up and in, and the Knicks are up by 16 points as we approach 2 minutes to play. 43 for Brunson.
And on the hunt, took the contact, floats up the shot. No. Rudy with an offensive rebound. What a job. He was up there. He saw the ball was on the rim. He backed off. He waited for it to come off the rim, grabbed it, then rose and dunked.
Highlights from around the NBA. Dante Exum, a three-pointer at the buzzer to force overtime in Dallas, and his Mavericks dominate in overtime, and they beat Houston 147-133. Houston is eliminated from the postseason. They're all done. Dallas sitting in 5th place in the West right now. Will they draw the Clippers in the playoffs opening round? Clippers beat the Cavs 120-118. And I do think those two are probably going to see each other. Here's the Paul George highlight in there. He had 39 points and 11 boards. Either one of those games impress you? Dante Exum was in your, hey, the best time to shoot is when you absolutely have to mode. Time was running out. No time to dribble or pass. Just let her fly.
Yeah, good for him, man. Finding his way. After, it didn't work well, obviously, with Utah, and then he had a ton of injuries.
Yep. Went to Europe, came back, and is making it work in Dallas. You also had a Zion Williamson highlight in there. Pelicans beat the Suns 113-105. They are tied for 6th in the West right now. Who plays Denver? Who plays Oklahoma City? Who plays Minnesota? How will they match up when the playoffs get underway?
Who cares?
Think they're all getting beat? Don't trust them anyway?
I think Denver's going to beat those teams you mentioned there.
Timberwolves beat the Lakers. AD got hit in the eye, had a corneal abrasion. He had to leave the game. It made it, apparently he already had one, so it aggravated it. So AD and his health and his availability, you don't usually think about the eye as far as availability, but that was the issue for AD last night. Timberwolves beat the Lakers 127-117, tied with Denver for the top spot in the West right now.
Why that went on?
Vince Carter, Chauncey Billups headlining the 13-member Hall of Fame class revealed Saturday. Jerry West, Michael Cooper, Bo Ryan, Doug Collins, all among those who will be enshrined this summer.
I don't know about Cooper, man. He was a reserve.
Seems like a reach.
Yeah, I mean, he's a nice player, and you need those types of players to win titles.
But if they're going to put Michael Cooper in the Hall of Fame, then a lot of people have to go into the Hall of Fame. He had an important role, and he's a popular player, but that's not usually who gets in the Hall of Fame.
I'd put Hornacek in then.
I see you drawing the comparisons.
And Michael Cooper, Pasadena High School. You know. Same high school as Eddie and Alex Van Halen.
Pasadena High's got a few famous people. DJ and PK.
Hashtag college basketball.
And I want to personally thank Caitlin Clark for lifting up our sport. She carried a heavy load for our sport. And it just is not going to stop here on the collegiate tour. But when she is the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft, she's going to lift that league up as well. So Caitlin Clark, if you're out there, you are one of the GOATs of our games, that we appreciate you.
That is John Staley, South Carolina coach, after South Carolina beat Caitlin Clark in Iowa to win the women's national title for South Carolina. It's a perfect season, 38-0. They've only lost 3 games in 3 years. They've got 2 titles in that span, 3 overall. Dominant. It's good enough for a dynasty, PK? 3 losses, 3 years, 2 titles?
Sure, if you want it to be.
Men's championship game tonight. UConn trying to go back-to-back. They face Purdue. Coverage starts at 5:30 on the Zone. The game will tip at 7:20.
2 hours of pregame?
Yeah. Got some commercials to move here, PK. John Calipari, 15 years as Kentucky Wildcats head coach, and it looks like he's headed to Arkansas for a 5-year deal. $8.5 million, multiple incentives, reportedly $6 million in NIL money. Arkansas won a title 30 years ago. Somebody there thinks John Calipari is the path back to relevancy.
Well, good for them, and going for Calipari's decided he wants to move on and get out of the grief he's been taking at Kentucky. I think it could have an effect. I think Mark Pope will get an interview, and then they got to decide what they want. The hottest candidate, I think is Nate Oates at Alabama. And I think if he wants the job, he'll get it.
Build a Final Four team in the SEC. Kentucky's not going to live with that. They'll take your guy.
Yeah, I think if he wants a job, he's the odds-on favorite. And I was doing some research and talking to some folks last night at 10:30 at night about this whole thing. And so I think that would be really cool, because if they use their marketing right, Joe B. Hall used to be the head coach, and so you can go from Hall to Oates.
Oh, see what you did there.
Yeah.
Get a little high-tech AI.
And
you could get
say,
the 2 of them together in
he
a
wanted
promo,
the job, and he could come in, Kentucky people, what I want, you got, and we might be too hot to handle, like a firm planes a can. You make my dream come true. And then he walks in.
See where you're going there.
Yeah, Hall to Oates. But I definitely think Pope will get an interview. And he's a salesman. He can spin it. And so he's got an opportunity to present himself. Obviously, he played there. And Pitino endorses him big time. Pitino coached there. So it'd be something to watch. I don't think he's the favorite. I think you might have somebody like a Billy Donovan, too, who actually has taken the Pitino route a little bit.
Gone to the pros. Time to go back to the college ranks.
Yeah.
Stay one step ahead of the posse.
Yes. So those are my guys. I think maybe one of those 3 will end up being the head coach. We'll see how it plays out. But I definitely think Pope will be spoken to.
You think Pope? Do you think he's in the 3rd spot or the 2nd spot?
I think Nate Oates is the coach that they want. And if Nate Oates wants the job, it doesn't matter who's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So I think Nate is the guy. Yeah. And I have no idea if he wants the job. He might think...
Does he want to stay at Alabama where he's built something?
Yeah.
Or does he want to move to Kentucky where there seem to be built-in advantages?
Well, I mean, but he's created advantages.
He has. He just got Alabama to the Final Four.
Yeah. And they're a basketball school now with Saban gone.
That's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, but this is a landscape moving type decision by Calipari, because you normally don't see coaches go in the same conference, and he's doing it. And I think it might be somewhat at this point, from what I understand, it might be a little bit along the lines of mutual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to fire you, but we're not going to be sad if you move along. So.
Right, and there's some massive buyout or something. So
this is all the dominoes, right? SMU changes coaches, so USC changes coaches, so Arkansas changes coaches, so Kentucky changes coaches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, but
Alabama
Pope will be in the running.
Yeah. All right, DJ and PK.
#NFL.
Miami Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill made some posts on social media that seemed to indicate Odell Beckham Jr. was set to join him in Miami as a free agent signing, coming off a season with the Baltimore Ravens. But OBJ posted, LOL, I'm confused today. Did I sign somewhere? Everybody keep hitting me. So, remember back in the day when a writer would write this and be irresponsible as sources, or somebody was misquoted, and now guys are just throwing stuff out there on social media unprompted on their own. You got to keep these guys away from the media. They're making bad news. You can't keep people away from their own social media. What is OBJ doing? Stand by.
Which one is hooked up with Kim Kardashian? I can't keep track these days.
Me neither.
Is it OBJ?
I want to say you're right.
Yeah. I don't know what everybody means.
I think it's supposed to be everybody, and he missed a couple letters, or I don't know. Maybe that's how you put it out there on social media.
I'm sure
I copied it verbatim.
Copied it verbatim.
Well, I don't know about that. I think it was more word for word, but
Heyo.
I don't think he left out letters on purpose.
Former Texas Longhorn standout Devondre Sweat was arrested in Austin, Texas yesterday on a charge of driving while intoxicated. Sweat's a top defensive tackle, NFL draft prospect. He won the Outland Trophy, and he'll have to answer that with NFL people. May have just hurt his draft stock big time.
Is he good enough? Because if he's good enough, it ain't here. Didn't the 49ers a few years back have a guy on Tuesday and he played on Saturday?
Once you're under contract, yeah. But before you're under contract, do they want to roll the dice?
If you're
on you?
good enough, yes. This is the NFL. They care about winning. Come on.
DJ and PK.
#Major League Baseball.
And the pitch hit in the air to deep left. It is high. It is far. It is gone. It's a grand slam. And the Yankees take a 5-1 lead. Swinging a drive toward left center field. That's in the gap. That's a base hit. Going all the way to the wall. 2 runs are in. Here comes Swanson. The relay by Betts to the plate. Not in time. 3-run double. Michael Busch. Cubs lead 3-0. There's a line drive pretty deep to left. Back forward is Duran. It's gone. Mike Trout has his first homer this year at Angels Stadium. His 4th of the year overall. The Angels are on the board.
That was a rocker where at one point there was the Trout farm right there where he hit that baseball out.
Highlights from Major League Baseball. The Yankees beat the Blue Jays 8-3. Giancarlo Stanton with the grand slam to help blow that thing wide open. The Pittsburgh Pirates beat the Orioles 3-2. They walk it off. They improve to 8-2 on the season. A great start for the Pirates. Also heard Michael Busch, bases clearing double. Cubbies handling the Dodgers easily, 8-1. Dodgers drop to 8-4. Merely fantastic. No longer red hot, PK. You win 2 out of 3 all year long. You still win over 100 games. So
I think Busch was a first-round pick of the Dodgers about 5 years ago. It's considered a big-time prospect. So he exacts some revenge.
Red Sox handle the Angels 12-2. Blowout there. And congrats to the Marlins. Miami has win number 1 after 9 straight losses to open the season. Say goodbye to 0-9. They're now 1-9. They beat the Cardinals 10-3. Salt Lake Bees split a doubleheader with Tacoma, lost 6-1, then won 2-1. Bees are off now to go play in Las Vegas for a 6-game series. DJ and PK.
#RSL.
You put the ball in dangerous areas enough. And again, I think at times our defensive shape was a bit compromised. I think they did a good job of finding space between our midfield line and our back line. We always wanted to put pressure on the ball. The problem with that is when you're not getting pressure on the ball, then you're forced to drop and cede space. And then it becomes a vicious cycle.
A late goal for Minnesota, and they end up splitting the points with RSL. The game finishes 1-1. RSL, kind of similar to St. Louis, scored first, had the lead for a while, couldn't hold on, give up the goal, and so turned 3 points in the road into just one. However, they are unbeaten in their last 3 games and off to a pretty good start, tied for third in the West right now on 11 points. They're coming home to host the Columbus Crew, the defending MLS Cup champs, next week. DJ and PK.
Batia takes the putter back, strokes it down the line to the cup, dripped it in, and he looks up to the sky and survives every imaginable obstacle to win the 2024 Valero Texas Open.
Akshay Batia, the winner on the first playoff hole in San Antonio. He beats Denny McCarthy, gets himself into the field of the Masters this week with his second career victory. Former BYU golfer Peter Quest finishes tied for 10th at 6 under after being a Monday qualifier into the event. Patrick Fishburne and Zach Blair missed the cut. And now the world moves on to the Masters. We will have Bob Harig, Sports Illustrated golf writer and author of Drive, The Lasting Legacy of Tiger Woods. He will join us coming up at 7:30, so just about 10 minutes from now. Also, John Rahm called for the LIV Golf to make a move to the traditional 72-hole format in their tournaments as a move to help in talks to reunify the PGA Tour and LIV golfers in an interview with the BBC. The closer I think we can get LIV Golf to some other things, the better. I think it'd be for some kind of unification to feed into a world tour or something like that. Play 72, not 54, John Rahm says. Although that was one of the big attractions, that and the money, when they tried to pull players away from the PGA Tour. But Rahm is ready for them to modify things and unify things.
Me too.
That is what is trending. There are your headlines. Bob Harig's coming up in 10 minutes. Steve Cleveland, former BYU and Fresno State basketball coach, at 9 o'clock to talk about tonight's title game with UConn and Purdue. DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're joined now by Bob Harig, Sports Illustrated golf writer, longtime writer for ESPN and the Tampa Bay Times as well. He's covered Tiger Woods since the beginning of his pro career, and he's got a book out, actually a second book out on him, and he joins us now. Bob, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So Drive is tied into the 5-year anniversary of Tiger's 2019 Masters victory. I'm curious, for a guy who has lived his life in the spotlight, in the golf spotlight since he was a teenager, how much more is there to know about him, especially considering he does try to keep as low a profile as possible and say as little as possible at times? Is he at a point in his life where he feels a little more expansive? Is this nuggets that have been observed along the way and maybe we just haven't seen them all? What was your approach going into this book?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the challenge. I mean, Tiger is not a forthcoming guy. He wasn't adversarial, but he did not cooperate, and he didn't with the first book I did. It's mostly reporting from being there, talking to others who have been around him, obviously all the people that he's played against, his coaches, his caddies. And, you know, the book is tied to the 5-year anniversary of the Masters win 2019, which was incredible. But that victory also kind of was a highlight of it was an example of, frankly, the book's title, Drive. He's had this amazing resiliency that other players, other people we just don't have. We don't have that kind of fight due to human nature. And Tiger has shown that numerous times throughout his career. And I sort of try to make the argument that he wouldn't have the record he has without it. I mean, certainly his skill, his ability, his talent was going to take him a long way. but it wasn't going to take him all the way. And, Tiger fighting back after back surgery, Tiger, frankly, numerous occasions of 142 straight cuts, winning the Masters after shooting 40 for his first 9 holes. I sort of recount all these examples in his career of his amazing resiliency, his amazing never quit attitude.
Is it true? Did I read that he shot a 31 in secrecy at the Masters the other day?
If he did, I have not heard that. He was here. I'm in Augusta now. He was here on March 30th to play a practice round. It was the first time he had come up this spring. He played with Fred Ridley, the chairman of the club, and Justin Thomas, and I think that was more just get familiar with the course again round. I've at times Tiger has played incredibly well in those tournaments, which is impressive. But I did not hear a score. We'll get to ask him tomorrow. He's on the course now, practicing today. He came up yesterday and just walked around the course and with a putter and a couple of wedges, and just didn't even hit full shots. Just worked on his short game around the course.
Given all he's been through and all the surgeries he's had, what percentage of he is he now of what he was? How good could he possibly be?
It's probably a fraction of what he was before. Unfortunately, I mean, he's still got back problems, which are ongoing, on and off. Certainly for a golfer who's 48 years old. And then there's the lower right leg. He about a year ago, not long after the Masters, he had a fusion surgery on his right ankle. So basically, that solidified it. That was meant to sort of, I guess, sort of like the fusion in the back. It was like to make it more solid, but it obviously took away a ton of flexibility. And so, he can walk a lot better. But he's certainly not got the mobility that he had before that allows him to push off on that ankle. I happen to think it's why Tiger, if you look, he's pretty bulked up. I think he feels he needs to use his upper body to get the ball out there, and he still can. He was at Riviera earlier this year. He didn't stay long because he got sick. He had the flu. But Tiger was pounding the ball out there. There was no problem with that. It's just the whole issue of, can he get to the ball? Can he walk properly? And obviously a golf course like Augusta is incredibly hilly and challenging, and it's not exactly the easiest place for a guy like Tiger to play golf at this moment.
Using Scheffler as the reason I'm asking this question, how much can the greens at Augusta get into your head? Yeah,
no doubt. I mean, and that's kind of Scotty Scheffler's issue these days. The greens are they're a challenge. They certainly they're very, very fast. There's a lot of undulation, a lot of hills, and you have to learn them to be able to read them. Most players will say they don't see the breaks in these putts that are there. And it takes a lot of knowledge. You have to have sort of been around for a while. So if you've got any kind of demons in your head over putting, it's not the greatest place to come, because you can get a little squeamish. And that's where Scheffler's shown some vulnerability. Now, in the last month or so, obviously he's putted a lot better. He won 2 tournaments. He had a great chance to win in Houston and had about an 8 or 9 footer on the last hole to tie and missed it. So his putting, if Scheffler's putting is just average, he'll be in contention. His putting has been way below average, and he's still been in contention a lot. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles the greens. He hits a lot of greens, which is always a big stat at the Masters. Usually the guy who wins is top 2 or 3 in greens in regulation. That's not always the case at other tournaments, but he usually is at the Masters.
Do you think the LIV guys are being tested and pushed enough with how they play when they come to somewhere like Augusta to handle it and to win? Or do you think the odds are heavily stacked now in favor of the guys who are on the PGA Tour?
I mean, that was a big question going into the Masters last year. They had only played 3 tournaments going into the Masters. Most guys are going to play 4, 5, or 6 at least before the Masters rolls around from the start of the year. But, look at what happened. Rahm wasn't with Liv then, but Koepka and Mickelson were tied for second, and Patrick Reed was tied for fourth. So I don't think the layoff or the lack of golf hurt them that much. This year they've all played 5 times, 5 live events. They just played last week in Miami at Doral on a tough course. It's hard to say. Brooks Koepka shot 77-77 over the weekend at Doral. I kind of like him this week, but I don't know what that means. Like, is something off? Or I actually was down there for a few days, and I watched him a little bit, and I thought he looked good. So I don't know if something came up or what, but I think that last year sort of put that aside. These guys are pro golfers. They know how to prepare. There's other ways to get ready. If they'd have played only 1 or 2 tournaments, that would be a problem. But they've all played enough, I think, to come here ready to go. And then it's just a matter of, are they playing well enough? Is their game strong enough?
I don't think, obviously, that it applies in this situation at this week, and there'll be 3 other majors to go after this week. But we've heard some talk about declining interest in the game of golf because of the 2 factions. How much do you buy it?
I do buy it. I think there's a fatigue about talking about this issue, about money. The whole money issue has turned people off. I understand why we're at this point. The stars of the game for long before Liv sort of were advocating for, why are you not taking care of the stars? And, it is a sport where, as much money as Tiger has made, you could argue that he's been underpaid from the tournament winnings perspective, because if you don't perform, you don't get paid. If Steph Curry goes 0 for 12, he still gets paid. But in golf, it doesn't work that way. And yet Tiger might have sold all the tickets, but if he misses the cut, he gets 0. And there had been this shift. But now I think what's happened is it's probably gone too far. And, obviously what the Live guys are getting is frankly, it's obscene, the amount of money some of them are making. And now the tour has funneled all this money to their players to sort of try to make up for it. I think people are tired of hearing about it. Another factor, though, that's maybe hurt is the stars on the PGA Tour this year have not stepped up. Scheffler's just recently has won. Wyndham Clark won at Pebble Beach, but that tournament didn't even play on Sunday. It got rained out. They canceled the final round due to weather. Rory, JT, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Schauffele, none of those guys, they're not winning. They're not up there enough. And I think, the sport kind of needs its stars to be in contention a little more often. So that has not helped either.
It seems like a common thread across many sports. The money is so big, and guys have interest in doing other things with their lives, or the sports change. But in baseball, starting pitchers used to be stars, and you'd go to see whoever the star pitcher was, and now guys are getting pulled after 4 1/3 innings. Well, you're not the hero getting big outs in the 7th, 8th, and 9th. You're gone by the 6th. And in the NBA, we know how often stars are sitting in the NBA. It's nonstop before you look at a score and think, wow, that's a surprise. You better find out if the top guys played. And with Liv, guys want to play 54 holes, not 72. If you're not following it really close, you don't know which week Liv is even playing or if they're off this week. This seems like a problem across a lot of sports. Is there anyone talking about any solutions to it?
Listen, as a guy who lives in the Tampa Bay area and follows the Tampa Bay Rays, I know all about the opener. And to your point about starting pitching, it's a great point. Fans love to go watch the starting pitchers, and now they've almost become role players. And in golf, you're right. Liv, Liv only plays 14 events. Like, you have to be pretty tuned in to know when they're playing. You have to be paying attention. Before they just played Miami, they went overseas. They played in Jeddah and they played in Hong Kong. Their tournaments weren't even available live on TV. That you could get them on an app, but you couldn't see it live on TV, and sort of out of sight, out of mind. Especially for us, for Americans mostly. That appeals to I will say, Liv does appeal to an international audience that feels starved, like that they don't get to see the star players very often. We're spoiled in the U.S. We get to see them on our time zones, and we can get to those tournaments. But golf has an issue right now. So much of sports has become about entertainment and appeasing a wide audience. And sometimes I think what gets lost is the actual competition. This is still a competitive environment, and those things are important too.
Is Dick Vitale the biggest celebrity who roots for the Rays?
He probably is. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Dick Vitale goes to a lot of Rays games and laments some of this stuff we're talking about. I think I've seen him on Twitter talking about pulling the pitchers and stuff. It's kind of funny.
Bob Harig joining us, Sports Illustrated golf writer. You got two books. You got the Drive book with Tiger that is out right now. Before that, you wrote a book about Tiger and Phil. Now, obviously, early on, there's going to be a lot of tension, right? Because they're fighting for the same thing and their spot in the sport. It seemed like somehow, as they got older, they reached some middle ground. Maybe they weren't best friends, but at least they were able to play like they enjoyed each other's company on TV, and maybe there was more to it. But now Tiger's so invested in the PGA Tour and Phil's so invested in Liv. Has it gone full circle? Are they butting heads, or it's the Godfather and it's just business? It's not personal.
No, I think they're butting heads. But, I mean, frankly, I don't think they speak. When I was writing that book, it was before Liv started. And I sort of was surmising that they would kind of ride off into the sunset as, kind of like Jack and Arnie did. Jack and Arnie were rivals, and then they became, they softened. As you get older, those competitions are in the background. I could frankly probably write a couple more chapters to that Tiger Phil book because I would say that their rivalry has intensified off the course in a different way. I mean, Phil, obviously, his legacy is going to be looked at a lot different because of what he did with Liv. Tiger's been a firm and staunch supporter in the PGA Tour and its legacy. And they've gone down different paths. And, the idea of them ever playing together again, I mean, it would be wild if they somehow got paired together at the Masters based on score. Augusta would never put them in the same group right now. But, based on score, they could be. And that would be wild. But they've definitely gone their different paths now, and where that goes now, I think a lot depends on if the sides ever come together.
Well, Bob, we appreciate the time. Enjoy the Augusta and the Masters, and good luck with the book Drive about Tiger Woods. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Bob Harig, Sports Illustrated golf writer, and you can check out his book Drive. All right, DJ and PK, we got to take a break. Yak, you got something to give away?
Yeah, you know what we do when you win a
golf. It's time.
We're back.
Be caller 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE, 801-575-ZONE, and get your assigned golfer for the Uinta Golf Masters giveaway. It's all brought to you by Uinta Golf, simply the best golf stores in Utah since 1971. The band of the day today is the Eagles, and it's brought to you by Live Nation. For all the live concerts and events in 2024, check out livenation.com.
Yeah, I used to like these guys back in the day.
Used to?
Hey, lighten up.
Hey, I was looking for people. I'm like, you know what? PK's back. Let's get some Eagles for him today.
Sedona. The people don't know that I was gone, but this is in homage to Sedona, Arizona, even though they say Winslow, Arizona, because they were coming over from the northern part of Los Angeles. So you come across, I think it's I-40 on the way to Sedona, and you go through Winslow. I think this defines their sound, even though obviously Hotel California is their big famous one.
But this is the Eagles vibe. This is it right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can feel it.
Yeah. And if you
have
want to
been
know,
to the corner because they've got the public art now and all that, and you got the photos and all that.
Well, I lived in Flagstaff for 2 years.
When did that go up? How long has that been there?
Flagstaff's been there for years.
That's not the question. You know it, but thank you. Flagstaff's got Stagecoach Stop written all over it. So, yes. Flagstaff.
I don't know when it went up.
Oh, really?
I can't. I would assume sometime in the 80s, but I don't know. After they made it gigantically huge and huger.
Somebody in Winslow had it. Hey, I got an idea.
Yes, and if you want to know why I'm a big Old Dominion fan, it's this song. Old Dominion is just these guys today of what I grew up with.
Yeah. We just spoke with Bob Harig, Sports Illustrated golf writer, who's got a book out on Tiger Woods. And he brought up the point that Tiger was probably underpaid. He elevated the sport. Everybody made money off him. And we got a question up on Facebook. Why did Caitlin Clark get so much flack? Isn't Caitlin Clark making everybody associated with women's basketball a lot of money? I mean, she's raising a profile, and either what she's done already or what we expect her to do as a pro. I mean, I guess with health, you never know. But what we expect her to do as a pro to one degree or another.
Oh, that'll be interesting because I don't think she's making everybody money because there's so many participants. In golf, it's a fraction of the people compared to all these studs that are involved in women's basketball. I'm not sure that she will because you're speaking of the WNBA as she goes on, and Indiana Fever have the number one pick here, and obviously they'll take her. Way to go, and away you go. I think she'll make Indiana some money for sure, but the sport isn't really set up to succeed at its highest level.
Playing in the summer.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just
indoor sports are set up for the winter, and outdoor sports are set up for the summer.
Right.
But this has been a summer league forever, and it's the economics that NBA wants to fill arenas in the summer. So a lot of these arenas, not all of them, but a lot of them have the NHL and the NBA and don't need a third tenant in the winter.
Yeah. It's sort of off the radar a little bit. Certainly the regular season is, maybe in the playoff. But it'd be cool if she could elevate the sport, that particular league, rather than the sport. She's already elevated the sport of women's basketball. I don't think there's any question about that. It's a question of, can she elevate this particular league? That remains to be seen as far as that goes. Because a lot of these great college players, you follow them and you're aware of them in college, and then they go off, and it seems like, and then when the Olympics happen, well then we're really tuned into it. But I'm not sure. Hopefully she can. That'd be great. More power to it, man. It would be fun for that league to rise up. But if you go by the TV rating and all that stuff, they make a big deal about the TV rating for the women's game, and that's awesome. But then you look at the women's game at the pro level, and it doesn't correspond.
It does not. But whatever she's able to do for it incrementally, I mean, she's going to sell tickets. It's also a smaller league. I think they only have a dozen teams, don't they?
I don't know.
And so, can't
I've been
come to a
following
town
women's
near you.
volleyball for 30 years.
That a
not
kid.
Women's.
That a kid. Good for you.
I told people that. You're so full of crap. You couldn't name me one volleyball player in the entire college ranks, and you follow women's volleyball. That took the cake. It took 22 years, but you finally outdone yourself.
Hey, I got year 23 and 24. Don't count me out.
So we'll see. I mean, she has brought untold amounts of attention, and it's really cool. She's a fun player to watch. I don't get why her peers, her older peers, in the basketball sense, they all took shots at her.
Scotty says it's jealousy.
It appeared to be.
Chowder says haters gonna hate.
Didn't make any sense to me. Why those ex-UConn players were on there just dogging her. Why?
She beat UConn.
So what?
UConn's lost other games. They don't win it every year. They win it a lot, but they don't win it every year.
Yeah, and then that controversial call and the moving screen and all that, and I love all these men, these media guys, just chiming in. What they're really saying is, "Look at me, man! I just support women's sports so much." That's what they're doing. They never said anything before, and now all of a sudden they're into it.
Yep. A lot of people got into it. I mean, that was a lot of people watching the game.
But the sports media guys, when you tweet about it, it's really, look at me. I'm so progressive. Come on.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. When we come back, the Utah Jazz, 12 in a row. How much more of this can you take? We will get to that next. Stay with us. Hot Takes or Toast is brought to you by Siegfried and Jensen with 30 years of serving Utah. Question of the morning, Jazz fans. How much of this can you take? 12 straight losses, heading for a 3-27 finish, apparently. A second straight year in the lottery, back into the draft, a third year, a fourth year. Where's the rebuild going? Ryan says, stop asking stupid questions. Seems like it's the question when Jazz fans talk. Jared says, I love it. I love that we're doing something we've never done before. Ask us next year at this time because the plan is to tank next year too. Exclamation point, Jared adds. He's already writing off 24-25.
Well, it doesn't look like they're going to be any good in 24-25.
It would take multiple trades, wouldn't it?
All sorts of stuff. Sure, yeah.
Steve says, I've been a Jazz fan for 40 years. And for the first time, I pulled the trigger and stopped watching. The product they put on the court is embarrassing and a disgrace to the uniform.
Oh, the product does suck. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I mean, we can spin it as much as they want.
Will Hardy got to the podium last night and talked about the his point in his first thing they put on the air was, basically we've got to be better in the first quarter. I mean, that just tells you they're not only losing, they're getting blown out right from the start of the game. It's routine.
Yeah, I think they ought to just skip the post game. There's no point in him getting up there and just saying a bunch of words just because it's required. It's a waste of time. I mean, there's nothing to be proud of.
Nick says I stopped watching months ago, except for the one game on a junior Jazz ticket that I took my 10-year-old to.
Yeah. If they want to tank next year, okay. It's sort of in an unusual situation because you can't come out and say we have no intentions of winning, but you can tell us. You can't tell us. You can show us.
With how the roster is put together.
Yeah, and so just go ahead and do that then. Just really, really suck. Get rid of, do like you're doing now, only get rid of those guys. Get rid of Markkanen then. Get rid of Clarkson. Get rid of Collins.
Strip it all the way down.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what you're doing now, and they're sitting over there if they show up in street clothes and not playing. Okay, so be it. But go all the way. Get rid of them all. Trade Markkanen. Get some younger draft capital, younger players. Why have them around then? There's no need for them to be around. And then let the young guys play. And if you don't play hard, then bench them. If you don't play smart, let them play through it. But if you don't play hard and you give me attitude, then you're out. But if they make mistakes, so what? And then they make mistakes and you tell them not to do it again and they do it again, so what?
At some point, they got to get better.
Well, you're not going to get better sitting on a bench. I don't think you're going to get better in the G League.
There's a limit to how much. You can get better in the G League, but there's a limit to how much you can get better.
Not for 3 years in a G League, you're not.
Nope. No, I think we've seen enough now that guys, even a half season in the G League can make a difference.
And that's fine, but they've already had that.
They have had that. These guys have had that.
Yeah.
The next round of guys, we'll see.
Right.
Depends on who they get.
Yeah, but I'm talking about these three drafted rookies right now.
Do you move the 30-year-old guys, and then do you take the next step and move the 27-year-old guys? How much are they going to strip it down?
And Collins. What do you want them for? They're only going to get in the way. If you're intent on all in for Cooper Flagg next year, then go ahead.
We're not even this year's draft. Let's talk about next year's draft. And yet,
well, that's
maybe that is the way it has to go.
It has to go that way.
It has to go that way.
You have to draft well. I guarantee you it has to be. It's not a maybe.
Have you given up on the thought that they're going to trade draft capital for veterans and get better?
No. But we're on the subject of tanking. If you want to change subjects, that's fine. But right now we're talking about tanking. And if that's what they want to do, all right, okay. You can't tell us, guys, we're going to lose this in 24-25 because we think we can really get a player, maybe even two, that can help us big time.
Transformational.
But they can't come out and say it. The league will fine you. It's not the right thing to do, blah, blah, blah. I get it.
And yet we know there's going to be at least a half dozen teams in the league that do something like that.
So don't tell me, show me. And right now you're straddling, and it's not going anywhere. And it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. This is the worst that it's ever been.
8th. Get a top 5 pick. Supposed to be all these great players at the top of the 2025 draft.
Well, then go all in.
Yeah.
And in order to be all in, you've got to get rid of these other guys. I mean, and I know marketing, trust, blah, 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 blah.
It's just math here. He's got 5. He should have 5 really good years in the league. Maybe more than that. But he should have 5 really good years in the league. If this rebuild's going to go 5, then you're going to burn 3 of them? That doesn't make any sense to me. But they can't tell us they're going to be awful, because you're right, they will get fined. It's not the right thing to do. But if you're going to be awful until he's 30, then go ahead and make the move and get somebody younger.
Right.
Whether that's draft capital or you trade him for somebody who you think is really good who's, 22.
And he's not that good to lift you by himself individually anyway. He's a nice player.
Yep.
And you need nice players. And he's not durable. 65 games is about it. And I know he sat this year. Well, okay, when he was 21, 22, 23, he was still sitting.
2 of those years, they didn't play 82 games.
He never plays 82 games. Every year he didn't play 82 games.
Didn't really play 72.
So, great. 2 of those years.
Yeah.
I have no reason to defend any of these people.
Oh, I hear you. Are they going to get anybody who averages more than 65 games a year?
Sure. Why not?
Because that just seems where the league is going. And back to...
No, Sexton has played in every game this year, so they already got one.
Okay. Is that what the best players do? Speaking of people who can score but aren't going to lift you.
Well, if you win the title, who cares? But Markin is not the best players.
Right. No.
He's a nice player. You'd like to have him on your team. But does he fit right now? If you're going to tank next year, he does not fit. If you're going to try to make the postseason next year, he fits.
Are they going to make other trades or not? That is the question.
Yeah, we'll know. They'll show us. They don't have to tell. They don't have to have a press conference.
We'll know by who they acquire and what the roster looks like.
We'll see it. And that's really more important than talking about it anyway. And if that's what they want to do, begrudgingly, I'll go along with it. Not that they care what I think, but as a voice of the fan, I would authorize or endorse, I guess maybe is a better word, the fan going along with it.
Matt's going along with it. He says, I'm watching. I'm glad it's almost over, thankfully. I am looking forward to what they do in the offseason.
Me too. Yeah, no question about that. Yeah. This offseason, next offseason, because it's going to be a process.
How many more rookies are they going to put on the roster?
Well, as long, if they're potentially great players, they can put on 10 for all I care. What's the difference?
They're not going to put on 10.
I know, but what's the difference? If they grow up and become outstanding players, I'm all for it. That's the way they're going to have to build the thing. That's the way they built it before. Nothing's really changed. The formula for the Jazz to be successful hasn't changed in 40 years. Draft well and develop. And then augment.
That part hasn't changed. The part that's changed is build a team that's as good as you can and then hit on somebody in the middle of the first round or late in the first round. That's different than tear it all down, be terrible, have a top 10 pick, maybe a top 5 pick, although we haven't seen them do that yet, and add 3 rookies to the roster.
Well, you have to have 3 draft picks in order to add 3 rookies. So how many times do you have 3 draft picks in the first round? That rarely happens. So of course that's different.
Except that they're stacked up to have that here.
If they want it, they don't have to have it.
They may still trade them.
Yeah. But this is the formula for them to get better is obvious. This is where they've cast their lot, and this is what they must do. And go ahead and do it. So I don't care how many rookies you have on next year, as long as they're good players and can develop into really good players. I'm all for it. I mean, they're not going to win the title next year no matter what they do.
That's true.
So what's the difference between 45 wins and 15 wins?
I think the difference for most fans is how quickly can they get back to being competitive and interesting.
Well, how bad do they want to suck?
Do you want to sacrifice a chance to win a championship just to make yourself interesting? I mean, you can pile all your assets into making yourself interesting, but then there's no way to get better after that.
Well, the odds are against them doing it anyway. They've never done it. And why would I think they're going to do it now? It's hard to do. This is a league that is not set up for these types to win it. If you get fortunate, then you got a shot.
Get your one.
And we go to San Antonio, blah, 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 and Milwaukee. Okay, great. Meanwhile, the 25 other teams, no, all the way up to 25. And maybe you can get one. If you get one, cherish it because you're probably not getting another. Dallas, Portland, Seattle, Toronto.
So Milwaukee got 2, but it took 50 years.
Strive for that one. And that's a worthy accomplishment. That one will equal 5 of the Lakers. And it will be glorious if it ever happens. And I hope like heck it does happen. Because these fans, they absolutely deserve it. There's no question about it. They've been so good, so passionate, so loyal for so long that they want it. I used to want titles, 1 for Larry Miller, 2 for Jerry Sloan. Well, they're both gone now.
Yep.
Do I want one for Ryan Smith? Not yet. I want one for the fans. The long-suffering fans.
Ryan's over there. Well, give me one as a fan. Don't give me one as an owner.
And that's great because if the fans get it, that means he gets it.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. And if you want to go from the fan perspective, put him in there.
Right.
He's talked about being in that club.
Being a fan since he was a junior Jazz player.
So that would be even sweeter. How many times does a fan become the owner? I mean, a lifelong fan of that particular team, and then he becomes the owner, she becomes the owner, and then they win it all. It would be storybook. I would love to see it. It would be the number one thing I would like to see outside of getting MLB. And even at that point, once they got MLB, I would still root for the Jazz to win it all before MLB.
Because the fans are so invested for so many years.
Yeah, they're great.
So many frustrations.
Yeah, right. And they deserve it. That fan who's aging is in his or her 60s now and is moving towards 70s, wondering. We've seen it. We've seen it so much, how much it means. We've seen with the Red Sox winning and fans going to the cemetery to celebrate with their deceased parents. We all have a romantic sentimentality vision of that and what that must mean to that man or woman or men or women who go to the cemetery and shared that with their deceased parents when the Red Sox freaking won. And the same thing with the Cubs. I can remember when the Cubs won, they showed some small bar and Harry Carey's wife there. And when the Giants won, they had a big video screen in one of those in the city parks that they have in San Francisco. And the people are going to, and there's this lady, white hair, clearly well into her 70s. She's standing there watching it, and tears are going down her eyes. Wow. That's what we would have here. And I want those people who said that. I told you there was a lady in the neighborhood. To this day, I'm not even sure if she's still living. But she said 3 words to me. She's only said 3 words to me the entire time. And that was back before when they let me do the Jazz TV, before I got fired. Unceremoniously dumped. Axed, if you will. And you got to stay on, but I didn't. And so I used to do it then. And so she would watch. Older lady. Well into her 70s, probably, I don't even know if she's still living.
And she looked at you and she said, Jazz going to win?
No.
Oh. I'm trying to figure. You got 3 words, Yock? Take a guess here before he tells us. It's not Jazz going to win.
I've told you this story.
I know you haven't. I've forgotten.
I know.
Come on, Yock, remember it. You've got a better memory than me. You're younger. You're
here's
sprier.
The thing. I've heard this story before, and I can't remember what the 3 words were.
You'll laugh. At the time, they made a change to the broadcasting folk.
Oh, okay.
They took Ron Boone off the television, put him on radio.
I remember this.
So he
now.
wasn't around visually. And
Where's the booner?
Yep.
Where's the booner?
Where's the booner?
Where's the booner? And I stood up real straight. They moved him to the radio. He's available there. You can catch all the games. His voice is still there. They just made a change on the television. And I was nervous that she would accept the answer.
Like you had anything to do with it.
She might club me, kick me in the shin if she didn't accept it. So that's the type of Jazz fan. And honestly, I do not know if that lady is still alive. And that's the type of Jazz fan that we deal with all the time. I went down to St. George over the weekend. The guy sees me, man. He wants to talk about the Jazz. Okay. He says, man, I know you don't want to be bugged about this, but I just want to ask you one thing. One business question. And he said, I want to ask you one business question. I thought, you got an investment or something? I didn't know what he was getting. I mean, I'm an idiot when it comes to business. And so he says to me, you want to talk about the Jazz? That's what he wanted to talk about. And so, yeah, it's just so intense that I want these folks to experience the joy of it. And if we've got to wait 2 or 3 years, well, if you die in those interim of those 2 or 3 years, I guess it sucks for you. But, if they can get on the other side of it, and eventually they will get on the other side of it. If the Clippers under Sterling can get on the other side of it, the Jazz with competent management can get on the other side of it. There's no doubt about it. No doubt in my mind.
Well, the Clippers are an interesting case. You'd think in L.A. they have some built-in advantages, but they had, if he wasn't the worst owner in pro sports, he was on a short list. And so just getting to the Ballmer era helps the Clippers.
Yeah,
time.
but that was
where's
30
the,
years. And I was covering
right.
the Clippers then.
Yeah.
And I can remember I was sitting in press row, and right behind me were 2, I can't remember who they were, but I would know who they were, but I just can't remember. And I could hear their conversation, and they're just laughing about their draft choices that they'd already made because they had a slew of draft picks, and most of them were bombed. And if they weren't bombed, you had like Danny Manning, who ended up with 2 ACLs. And you have 2 ACLs, you end up being a shadow of yourself. Yeah.
Miss.
Right. And they were literally laughing.
Yeah. Well,
about
it went like that for a decade.
Yeah. Like, oh, man, can you believe it? That guy's the worst 7th pick of the draft, the history of the draft. Oh, that guy's the worst whatever. They were just laughing. I don't think that'll happen here. I think they'll make solid choices because the proof's already in the pudding. Ainge's got a long history, but wouldn't you say that these draft picks so far look like they're solid enough? There's still a long, long way to go when you're evaluating a 20-year-old rookie. But right now, it looked like, okay, for where they were drafted, and like 3 separate 10s, if you broke the draft down into thirds.
Early first round, middle first round, late first round.
Yeah.
I don't think, is there a big-time difference maker, but you don't really expect to get a big-time difference maker there? I guess to your point, you can see why the guys they drafted were drafted where they were. However, it pans out for them in their careers. I mean, when you look at, Hendrick's athleticism, how much longer was he going to last? Now, he didn't go earlier because he's really raw. But he's clearly made strides.
Right.
He's clearly improved.
Right.
Now, is he going to tap into 10% of his potential or 50% or 90%? I mean, who knows?
Remains to be seen.
Yeah, I don't think they know. They suspect, they have an idea, they hope, but they don't really know. But you do see why he's there. And sensible, why do you go at the end of the first? Well, he's got a skill that people in the NBA want. Can he do all the other stuff? He's not going to dominate, but could he stay in the league for a while? Which at that point in the draft, once you're in the back third of the first, can you stay in the league a while?
Yeah.
Can you stay 5, 6, 7 years? How long can you last? DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Coming up next, the University of Kentucky. Who knew when SMU made a decision that it would impact the University of Kentucky? But here we are, and one day, is that going to impact BYU? We will get to that. Mark Pope, Kentucky. We will do that next. Yak, you want another qualifier? You can't tell us who it is, right?
Well, they're all randomized. Our last one was Sahith Theegala. So
okay, so we know one golfer gone.
Yeah.
Now we get our second qualifier. It's the UNA Golf Masters giveaway. Be caller 12 right now at 801-575-ZONE. Get assigned your golfer for the UNA Golf Masters giveaway. It's all brought to you by UNA Golf, simply the best golf stores in Utah since 1971.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
Do you think there would be any difficulty adding 2 more professional sports teams here locally?
Yes.
And getting the support?
Yes. Difficulty? Sure. Absolutely.
Do you think it'd be impossible?
No.
You think we could bring in 2 major franchises and have them both survive?
If the leagues individually choose Salt Lake City, it's because they're betting on our future, not the present. I think we'd sell tickets to these things right away. I think sponsorships, I'm not saying sponsorships for the Jazz are a tough sell or that they're struggling or by any means. They're hustling to find every nickel that's not nailed down. It's not like this market is just swimming in dough. But we've got some expanding economic sectors. Population is expanding here. Our education around here is pretty good. Our teachers are really good. Our universities are really good. And this is a great place to live. And so if we got 2 new Major League franchises right out of the gate, yeah, it'd be probably tough sledding for a few years. But the idea is that they're betting on the future.
Hear Jake Scott and Ben Anderson every day from 10 to noon on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, and it's sponsored by Hercules Credit Union.
DJ and PK got a question up on Facebook. The Kentucky basketball job looks like it's coming open. Do the Wildcats come after Mark Pope? One of their own, PK.
Yeah.
He played there. He's got the experience. He's had a tourney team. Is he ready for the big job? Because there's no doubt at the University of Kentucky, they are obsessed with college basketball. It's a huge job. And he's one of their own. But you talk to some people in the world of college hoops, you got a list. He's on it, but he's not at the top of it.
Yeah, I think he's on the list for sure. Why wouldn't he be? He's one of their own. Rick Pitino loves him. Pitino knows basketball. There's no question about that. He certainly knows basketball. I think if Pitino was 10 years younger, he'd probably take that job again. But Pope won the title there. And he's smooth, man. He knows how to interact with people. So Maybe how do you not take that job if you're Mark Pope? Don't give me any other thing as to why he wouldn't take that job. I believe he absolutely would take that job, and he should. But I don't think he's the first choice. I think this Nate Oates is super high on everybody's list. Now, there's like an $18 million buyout, but it is Kentucky.
And they're obsessed.
Yeah.
A couple people might write that check.
Right. And, you know...
Isn't that the surprise of it?
What?
I mean, well, Calipari leaving Kentucky isn't surprising. He's been there 15 years. They weren't winning at the same clip, either because of the way he moves around or the way they move on from coaches. If that job comes open, you know, over the course of this season, when you hear Reed stuff, you wouldn't have been surprised if the job came open. But isn't the surprise that somebody at Arkansas is writing the check? I mean, he's going to get paid $8 or $9 million, and they're supposed to be giving like $6 million in NIL. I mean, that's
what
Arkansas's throwing a lot of money into this.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me.
Okay,
I mean, they're SEC. That's the money that they get from football.
So when Musselman leaves to go to USC, I just got to say Calipari wasn't my first thought. I guess you're right. When you sit down and like they make the move, and there's some booster who wants to get back to the glory days of 30 years ago with Nolan Richardson.
Well, apparently there's a booster there, an influential dude who's real tight with Calipari. So there's a connection.
Yep.
Last name's Tyson, and they happen to, manufacture all kinds of food products.
Yeah.
And they have a little bit of money lying around.
Right. So there you go. And you can win there. Why can't you win there?
Yeah, they've won there before.
Yeah. So, and, maybe the scrutiny won't be as much. So, and it's somewhat a surprise when I saw it yesterday afternoon, but nevertheless, so be it. And Calipari's one of these guys that he doesn't have a home. He acts like he has a home everywhere, and he's your best friend and all. I mean, I interviewed him once, and he was sitting in his Fruit of the Looms.
He made himself at home with you.
Yeah. Yeah, he was coach of the New Jersey Nets, and the Watchdog sent me down there for Van Horn's rookie year, and turns out Van Horn was hurt. But I still went down and did a piece, and he invited me in, yada, yada, yada. The thing about it is Calipari's 65 years old. But, if he's got his health and his energy, who's to say he can't go another 5 years?
Yeah. And 5 years, you don't have to build a program now. It's add water and stir, man.
Yes. Yeah.
Hit the transfer portal and be in the Final Four next year.
And he can identify talent for sure. But as far as Kentucky, I think they'll take a look at Pope. And you got the usual suspects of guys that have had a lot of success, but been there for a bit. But it's Kentucky, and so virtually anybody, if they were enthralled with anybody, Dan Hurley, Drew down at Baylor, you name guys who, probably not Izzo, but other those types of guys, if Kentucky calls, you take the call. Your agent takes the call. There's just no doubt about it. But I would see, to me, Oates would be the guy. And then they'll have to figure out the huge buyout. I understand that. But Oates has done phenomenal work at Buffalo and obviously at Alabama. And ex-high school coach. So he's a grinder. He's been at all these different levels and had success. I assume he had success at the high school level. Bob Hurley tells a story, or Bobby, not the dad, the son, the Duke guy who's at ASU now, tells a story that when he was an assistant to his brother Dan at Rhode Island, and they would do these coaching clinics. And the first guy in line they noticed at numerous different places was Nate Oates when he was a high school coach. So Bobby Hurley noticed that. And so the guy's just obsessed with it. And he brought him on the staff at Buffalo. And then Hurley comes west. He takes over the job at Buffalo, does well, and moves down. So this is a guy that already has proven to win at his level. And you put him in Kentucky, there's no reason why he wouldn't win at the highest level. So
does he want to go, and do they want to write the checks?
Yeah. I would think he would be the leader right now. But you're going to interview more than one dude because you don't know if he's going to take it unless you just it's a real quick thing. Wham, bam, boom. Yeah, I'll
you
take
pick
it.
up the phone. He's like, yeah. When do you need me there?
Right. I mean, DeBoer over there, Washington was pretty quick.
Well, in the transfer
Fish
portal
from Arizona to Washington was quick.
In the transfer portal era, I think everyone feels the pressure to move quickly when you have an opening because all you do is lose players. Everybody's coming for your players quickly.
I would think by the end of the week they'd have something set up. But Pope would be someone I would definitely look at, and I would interview him and see. Plus, two, you need to have guys in mind for 5 years from now. And Pope is young enough to be 5 years from now if Oates went to the NBA, say, whatever.
Right. Well, if he doesn't win, they'll be looking for a coach in 5 years.
He'll win.
And if he does win, you're right. Who's to say? We've seen college coaches go to the NBA.
That's what Chris Hill did all the time. I can recall talking to him, the Illinois coach, Underwood. They played Utah up in Portland in Krzysztofiak's first venture into the NCAA tournament. I think it was his second year. But he coaching at Stephen F. Austin. And they won. The Utes won. They won both their ball games and went on the Sweet 16 that year. And I remember talking to him at the I forget the name of the Portland arena, but anyway.
The Rose Garden?
No. It's something with an M.
Okay.
It's the newer one. We were talking, and he was just enthralled by Underwood. That's his name, right? Brad Underwood? And it was clear that if something were to happen down the line, that Chris had this guy on his radar. And it didn't work out, and Krzysztofiak stayed, and Underwood, I think he went to Oklahoma State and then over to Illinois.
Do your homework, have some background, so when you do have your next job search, whether it's the coach's choice or your choice, you're not starting from square one.
So they most definitely have to talk to Pope. There's just no question about it that they have to talk to him.
You know, and the other thing that happens in business is you talk to people, and if you're not going to hire him, what would you do? Why would you do it? How would you handle this? And maybe you come up with a couple good ideas.
Right. It works both ways.
Right. Yeah.
You can learn from Mark, and Mark can learn. And for BYU people, you could argue that Mark, through this experience, would be a better coach at BYU.
You never know where people are going to get ideas.
Right. And just to have him go through it.
Either eliminate bad ideas, like, I shouldn't be doing that, or I don't want to go down this road, or I do want to go down this road, or I should think about this idea. It comes lots of ways.
Yeah.
Aaron's with you. Aaron, that is Mark's dream job. Well, when you play there and when it has Kentucky's history and profile.
Duh.
Right.
That could be probably 30 guys' dream jobs. And maybe not literally Kentucky, but at the bluest of blue bloods.
People who played at Duke who've gone into coaching.
Yeah.
People who've played at any of these basketball schools. Yeah.
Anywhere. It doesn't matter. Any
Getting back to your alma mater.
And that makes it a little more special for him because he was there and he won at the highest level, and that's way cool. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm excited for him to have that opportunity. My gut instinct says it won't be him, but I don't really know because I think that they can. It's just Kentucky, and it seems like they wield so much power that they can pretty much get whoever they want to get now.
And why wouldn't they want to go to Alabama, hurt a conference rival, and get a guy who's already been to a Final Four and won in the NCAA tournament?
Right. And he's really good. His record speaks for itself. The question then becomes, say Mark Pope takes the job, who would the Cougars get? Oh, we'll get to that next.
All right, I guess PK wants to go to break, and he wants to get to that next. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
If they win a conference championship, you have to stop disparaging the conference that you just won the conference championship in.
Why?
Right?
Why?
I guess we'll take your garbage trophy.
Why not?
From this
I want
conference.
Brett Yormark when Utah wins the Big 12 next year.
Coach Garcesian.
To present a trophy to Coach Wiley Whittingford. And
oh my gosh.
I would love to see that. I can't
Kyle Cranningham.
What's the craziest name for Kyle Whittingham we can come up with?
I think you nailed it.
Brett Yormark's going to say.
It's Wiley Willingford.
Wiley Willingford.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. And now, your Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer strong play of the weekend.
Short. Rebound. Washington. Exum. Bullock pressuring. A three will tie it. A handoff to Luka. Back to Exum. Got it. This place is jumping.
Dante Exum's 3 at the buzzer forces overtime. The Mavericks beat the Rockets in OT. That's the Chevy Strong play of the game. Know it this afternoon. JJ and Alex will call for it, and you'll have a chance to win fabulous prizes. All right, Mr. Big T's, the spotlight is on. The microphone is turned up. If you weren't with us in the last segment, we were talking about the developing news in the last 24 hours. Really the last 12, I guess, out of Kentucky and Arkansas. John Calipari will go to Arkansas to replace Musselman, who went to USC because SC's coach took off for SMU. The dominoes keep falling. If Kentucky, and you think that Kentucky's going to hire the Alabama coach, that was what you heard talking to people last night, and it makes total sense given what Alabama's been
if he wants it. I don't know.
If he wants it, are they going to write? There was a big buyout. But let's say that doesn't happen. And Mark Pope, who once upon a time played for the Kentucky Wildcats. Now he's got the head coaching experience. He's taking the team to the NCAA tournament. Kentucky comes calling.
They're taking 2 teams.
What would BYU do?
If they have an opening here in the next week or so for their coaching position,
there's a JC coach in Fresno. No, wait. They've done that story already.
I think, number one,
there's someone on staff. No, that's a different story.
I think Oates can have that job if he wants it, and they figure out the buyout and all that stuff.
Right.
And, $18 million.
And then what does Alabama do? That's a whole other story.
Yeah. So I think that he would be their number one choice, and I think you do the same thing with Madsen for BYU. You want the job, Mark? If you want the job, let's work it out. And then it's up to Mark to say, yes, I do. No, I
want
don't.
to stay. I want to stay at Cal, or I want to go to BYU, and he makes the call.
And BYU, now that job becomes extremely attractive. The thing about it is they want the active LDS. I think that I don't think they need that, but that's what they want. I think several guys could keep the standards and be a great representative. I think Cody Fugger could do it in a heartbeat. He's been there for years. He knows how to negotiate the landscape, but they won't do it, so it's pointless to talk about. And that's their right not to do it. They don't want to do it. I'm not criticizing them, whatever. That's a waste of time. They're going to stay with that, so it's not going to be.
But you got a guy over here who coached at UVU and had success, and now he's
Big
at
time
Cal.
Success.
Right.
And they had a nice season.
Right.
Yeah. And then if he says, and now we'll just say why it's a great job, is because they're in the Big 12. It's the Big 12.
It's the Big 12, brother. You got to give it a brother. You can't cheat yourself there.
I didn't want. If I give it a brother with BYU, people might think I'm mocking.
That's the Dan Hawkins line.
And that's.
It's Division I football. It's a Big 12.
So that's a great job.
Oh, does brother have to go play intramurals?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm mixing and matching. My bad.
Right.
No, you got to keep it pure. You can't mix and match like that. That's my bad.
Is there concern, though, about Madsen signing that 2-year contract extension already that probably increases his buyout?
Well, not to me, but
you're not writing the check.
If you want him, he's the overwhelming, most dominant candidate. He's so obvious. It's like it was I knew all along. Well, the last two major hires, we knew from day one who it was going to be. It was going to be Pope, and it was going to be Kalani.
Clearly the leading candidates.
They were the overwhelming candidates. Yep. So, but if what Yak is saying is there, then to me, there's an obvious second choice.
A former assistant coach?
He's a current assistant coach. Obvious candidate. I would leap to get him.
Did you spend hours talking with him and his father on the phone back in the day?
Bingo. Bingo. Chris Burgess.
I haven't gotten over the fact that PK would leap. Have we seen PK leap?
I would, yeah. Standing broad jump. Yeah. Absolutely. I think Chris is ready.
Well, he's a current assistant coach. I said former because I meant former at BYU. A former BYU assistant coach.
Okay. All right, I got you.
But yes,
yeah.
I think we're all aware he is a current assistant coach at the University of Utah.
To me,
but the difference between him is that he hasn't been a head coach.
Right. Mattson has proven it.
Matson's got a level of experience you can't match.
Yeah. Right.
He hasn't had that opportunity yet.
The fact that he played in the NBA and speaks Spanish doesn't do a whole lot for me. It's more about the coaching. Yeah. Coaching does a lot for me. That's what it's about. But Chris, I think Chris is ready. And Chris is truly one of the all-time great people. And Chris, his experience, having been this highly touted kid who, he was like the most pronounced kid at the time. And we know what happened. He told me in the gym, Roger Reed let down, 9 million LDS folk at the time, and yada, yada. Goes to Duke, doesn't work out, comes to Utah, was leading the team in rebound and scoring when he had the foot injury, and it really derailed him. So he was having success at Utah, and then he has to bounce around overseas, but he's really paid his dues, and he can look people in the eye and say, hey, I know what it's like to struggle. I've been there. I had to grind.
I know what it's like to transfer.
Yeah.
A lot of experience there.
Right.
Is he as clear-cut number 2 in your mind as Mattson is a clear-cut number 1? I mean, because it's Mattson 1 by a mile, right?
Yes.
But it's really he's number 2 by a mile.
In my mind, yes. There's the Perry guy, the Vegas assistant, certainly has an extensive background, and he has been a head coach. Was it
Portland
University?
State?
Yeah, okay. Right. And so he deserves serious consideration. So maybe it's not as clear-cut as Mattson is number 1. But I'm biased with Chris. I've been around him a million times. I've talked to him a million times. The guy, he knows basketball, and I believe he is a great recruiter. He can relate to people. He's just a great, great dude. I can't say enough about him, really. If he were available, I would go after him. I don't know Perry. I mean, I know people who know him, and I know he's paid his dues, and I'd be okay with it. But Burgess would be my guy if Mattson doesn't want to leave and he just signed the deal, yada, yada, whatever it might be, circumstances are. I would leap. I literally would leap at an opportunity to get Chris because I think he'd do a fantastic job in Provo.
What does Steve Cleveland think of all of this? And what would he advise someone who called him and asked for advice if indeed they would do that? Well, we'll find out. We'll talk to Steve next. Stay with us. DJ PK is brought to you in part by The Dish Pros. Join JJ and Alex live Wednesday from 3 to 6 at The Dish Pros, 8034 South State Street in Midvale. Time to welcome Steve Cleveland back to the show. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, fellas.
Steve, the college basketball world is spinning. Coach Cal, 15 years at Kentucky, ready to move on for quite the payday in Arkansas, apparently. Are you, what's the most surprising part of the story here? Because I think the thing that caught my eye was not only are they paying him, they're giving him $6 million in NIL money. $6 million, and he's going to make 8 or 9. He's got bonuses built in. Who knows what it'll turn out to be? Arkansas all in on the college hoops, but there could be a trickle-down effect that, who knows, might even trickle down to BYU. We'll have to see as the dominoes keep falling. But what was the most surprising part of the Coach Cal news?
Well, him leaving doesn't surprise me. I mean, I've watched Cal coach and play and have been around him, and I felt like that he was stuck. In fact, when I heard the news that he was going to Arkansas, Arkansas was open. Why Arkansas? All those circumstances really don't matter to me. I just think that he had done what he could do there. They just kind of hit a wall and had a few disappointing years. So it doesn't really surprise me that it's like, I need a new life. I need a new blood. I need to get reinvigorated. I don't know how old Cal is, but
65.
65?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he could probably coach another 10 years. You take good care of yourself and do what you're going to do. But it kind of made sense to me, to be honest with you. I mean, I was surprised when I first heard about it, but not so surprised that it's just kind of been stuck a little bit there for a while, and things haven't been what they should. And I watched their team play 3 or 4 times this year, just not whole games, but parts of games. And I don't know, it just didn't appear like he was having a lot of fun. It's just expectations are so huge there, and expectations will be huge too when you're paying a guy $6 or $8 million a year at Arkansas. But I think it's a good move for him. It doesn't surprise me. There's just a time, I think, when you just know, you know what, time has come, got to go, new challenge, new opportunity, and I think that's what we have happening there.
Follow my storyline a little bit here. So Mark Pope then gets a Kentucky job, which leaves the BYU job open. Rick Pitino was born in 1952. He's still coaching. I know a guy who's born in 1952 who used to coach at BYU. Are we going to see the return of Steve Cleveland to Provo, Utah?
That's probably not happening, but
you might go back to Provo. You need some groceries or something. You drive across town.
Yeah, I'm getting I have 2 children in Provo. I'm living in Lehigh, so I could get down there. But yeah, just talking about Mark and that circumstance and situation, I can't even imagine. Have you heard anything about that? Or is that just kind of rumor mill? Because I would be shocked if he left after all that he's done and where they're at and what's happening.
Well, it's Kentucky, man, and he played there. Rick Pitino has just been endorsing him several times on social media, as Mark has had a number of big wins in the Big 12 this season. So, man, to me, wow, that would be tough. It's Kentucky, right? I mean, it's as high as it gets.
Yeah, you're right.
And he has a relationship with, and they won the title there when he was playing. Look at it.
I think the hitch in all of this is that in the old days, absolutely he gets talked to, but with the transfer portal, you have to get a coach so quickly. So if you're Kentucky and you decide you want Alabama's coach, in the old days, you'd had time to talk to 4 or 5 other people, maybe build some background for a search a few years down the road, maybe get a few good ideas, interesting perspective on assistant coaches or trends or strategies, how to tighten up the act a little bit. But I don't know if you have time for that now. If you want the Alabama coach and he wants you, I don't know if you have time for the phone calls. You got to get him in place because the transfer portal is constantly moving and people are trying to pick over your roster.
Yeah, that's true. No, absolutely true. And things are happening quickly. And, hey, Mark's going to be good wherever he's at. And like I said, I will just say what my thought is that I don't see that happening. But I don't have that inside knowledge, or I've not heard any conversations about it. Would that be a great opportunity for Mark? Yes, absolutely. You have resources that are unimaginable, and NIL money, and all the things that go with that. He's also got an entire team back that has a chance to do something special again next year. If Jackson Robinson stays, they're going to be picked in the top 3 or 4 in the Big 12 next year probably. And so, I don't know. Listen, I hope that Mark Pope does whatever he and his sweet wife and family want to do, because that's what it comes down to. What's in your gut? I don't think there's a bad choice here, and you could probably figure out reasons why he should leave, and that there's an opportunity here to be at the highest level in a program that has worldly well known and it's just had great success, and you got a BYU team that they're a program that are trying to build and be competitive in the Big 12, which they've done. I know there's a sour taste in your mouth when you lose in the tournament in the first round, and everybody was disappointed in that. They need to get over that real quickly. Go and get it. Make sure the NIL money is there and available, and making sure you keep all your guys. And I just don't see guys leaving there right now. And then see what happens. I mean, Mark will always have probably opportunity to get jobs, but this is a special one. And like I said, if you tell me tomorrow that he made that decision, then that must have been what was exactly right for he and his family. And then that's how I would leave it. I mean, listen, there's no regrets about whatever you do. And I think that if that's the path, go for it, commit to it, and be the best you can. If it's not something that really feels good in your gut, then leave it alone. Keep doing what you're doing. The job opportunities will always be available to coaches these days, one way or another. And but I'd be surprised. But again, it's not something like I feel like, oh no, he needs to stay at BYU. That's his responsibility. No, none of that applies. He's at BYU because he loves the guys and he loves the program and he loves the leadership there. But you make decisions like that and you move forward. So I wish him well. Whatever he did, I mean, from a selfish point of view, I hope he stays because I think they've got something really special going on at BYU. But that's his choice, and we'll hear more about it, I guess, if it happens.
Plus, too, how about the money? Where the money factors in, I'm guessing that Kentucky is going to, if they zero in on somebody, it's basically whatever it takes to get them because they've got the resources.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is this, and I guess Mark, obviously, if this gets serious to his point of being really a serious situation, he's going to have conversations with the president and the AD and everybody at BYU as well. And they've got a number, and it's not like going into the Big 12 allows them to pay coaches, men's and women's coaches, more money than they've ever paid them. But I would think that that's a discussion that they're going to have. I don't think it's the most important discussion. If he's getting $7 or $8 million to go to, Kentucky versus maybe getting 3 or 4 at BYU. I don't know. I just not sure that the money's the reason he would go, even though it's a significant amount of money. You give him like a 7 or 8 year deal at $8 million a year. That is something that's hard to pass up, but he'll have opportunities at BYU to grow and maybe not make that kind of money, but there's other things that maybe as a family and with friends and connections in this community, there's a lot of things that get played into this that you have to think about. And one of the really important things is that making sure you and your wife are on that same page. And this isn't a decision that Mark Pope, if he were to leave, is going to make by himself. Leanne is bright and a big part of that family, and it's got to be good for her. And it's always hard to leave kids. They have children that are friends of my grandchildren, and they spend a lot of time doing things, and just uprooting and leaving is never, ever easy on any family to do. No matter what the money is, it's hard. And so those are all the kind of discussions that you need to have with your family, no matter what the numbers are.
When PK and I have talked about these jobs, I think our discussion has largely been informed by listening to Chris Hill over the years talk about, hey, this program is at the point where we need to hire coaches who have head coaching experience. And it's different when you move over one chair. And there's 350, colleges out there. It's 362 now, I guess, playing college basketball. We can get one of them to come here. And that informs us. Now, you broke out of that box. You made the jump from junior college to college. How much room is there for that in the game these days? Do you look back and think you were a little nuts for trying it, and it's crazy that it worked out as well as it did? How'd you view that then? How would you view that now?
I think it's more difficult, though. One of my good friends, Vance Wahlberg, who is a high school coach at Clovis West High School, as I was, is more than likely going to become the next Fresno State basketball coach. Now, Fresno State, when I went there, had all sorts of outside issues with violations and probations, and there was a lot of crazy stuff that went down. That's not the case at Fresno right now. But it is a really odd thing. I mean, at the time, when I came as a junior college coach, it was the first time. I mean, it just hadn't happened in years. And so it was kind of a unique situation. And to this day, you kind of shake your head. How'd that happen? I mean, I know a lot of people thought that. What are we doing here? And but that's not the way it works now. And I think that for coaches that are in high school and junior college doing those kinds of things, usually their path will be to become an assistant and then eventually be like an associate head coach, or in a program get success, and then they get picked to be a college coach. I mean, that's how it works now. It certainly is not doing that anymore. And I think if I wasn't the last or one of the very last junior college coaches ever to go from that particular point to a head coaching position. There have been lots of junior college and high school coaches who have become Division I coaches, but the path was different. It was a path of becoming maybe a ops guy to an assistant to a third assistant to a second assistant to, after 10 or 12 years, maybe an associate head coach. And if that program's winning, that's what guys are looking for. I mean, think about it. Who would be the most prepared to deal with all facets of basketball if you started your journey in high school and you learned how to create an offense and a defense, and I know there's a lot of recruiting that goes on in high school these days, but it's not the normal path for the majority of schools. You grow up in an area, and then from there you get an opportunity maybe to get a JUCO job like I got. But even if it wasn't a JUCO job, maybe it's an ops position or whatever it might be, a strength and conditioning coach at a mid-level program. And maybe there was a connection there with a friend, and who knows what the circumstances were. And then 5 years later, you're the second assistant, and team is doing well, and now all of a sudden doors are open. That typically today is what the path's going to look like. And then obviously with all the jumping of players and NIL money and coaches on the move, oftentimes you're picking the blue bloods from another blue blood and the programs, and it helps recruiting. So I wish Mark the best. Whatever he thinks is best for his family, it doesn't matter what I think or that you guys think. We all have opinions, but I would be surprised if he left at this particular point in time. I would not be surprised down the road if he went to a place like Kentucky or like university. So we'll kind of have to see. But certainly the path was way different for me. And interestingly enough, that two guys that coached at Clovis West High School would be basketball coaches, at Fresno State. You just can't see that. But that being said, not that anybody that's listening to the show would even know who Vance Wahlberg is, but he's been with NBA teams. He's had a short stint at Pepperdine. He's been a high school coach. He won a state championship. He's done so many things, and all of the dribble drive stuff is stuff that that Oates used at Alabama. I mean, there's a lot of Division I coaches that are in touch with him as a result of what he's doing offensively, and consequently, he's being rewarded by having an opportunity to kind of rebuild the program.
You take any pride in the situation where you get to the Final Four and you got a couple of guys who were high school coaches? We already spoke of Oates. I think he was a high school coach for like 11 years in Michigan, I want to say. And then Dan Hurley was a high school coach in New Jersey for about 9 or 10 years.
Yep. No, I love it. There's no handout. I don't just listening to these coaches and hearing what their philosophy is and the circumstances. And, you look at UConn and, Coach Hurley, he's a no-nonsense guy, and I love the thoughts from him and Matt Painter in terms of how we go about recruiting. And neither one of them are diving deep into the portal. There is some portal action going on there, but they've been able to keep guys in the program and stay within the program. And I think it's one of those things. I mean, I think Purdue picked up a kid named Lance Jones from Southern Illinois, who ended up being a really good portal person for him. And UConn has, done a little bit of that as well. But they're building it from a foundation, building it up. And I think that, and then they're also in situations where the best players in the country want to go play at Purdue. They want to go play at UConn because of the success that they found over the years. And, it was really, it hurt last year for Purdue. I mean, you get a first-round loss, it's a motivated team, but they're doing it the right way. And there's a lot of guys doing it the right way throughout the country. But it's one of those things that they've not had to completely depend on transfer portal guys. Not that they don't, both coaches are using it a little bit, but not to the degree where they're having 5 and 6 guys coming. In terms of the money, in terms of NIL, that's not going away. And I suspect at some point in time, changes will be made. But at the end of the day, you can't drop the ball on NIL, especially where these guys are at. You've got to be able to keep your best players, and that's what Purdue and UConn have done. So, big part of what's going on. We'll see what happens down the road, but you got to pay attention to NIL when you're at their level because you can lose guys real quickly.
There's no chance I thought we would talk to you this long without bringing up the title game. But things have changed in the last 24 hours. So let's get to the title game. Connecticut, I know the last game was a little more competitive, but it was still awfully decisive. What chance do you give Purdue tonight? How overwhelming do you think and overpowering this Connecticut team is, and UConn just goes back to back and keeps doing what they do?
I think, UConn is a team that would be hard to bet against. Let's just say that. And I think they've got shot makers. They've got really, really, really good guard play, and guys that can just take care of the ball. They can defend, and and then you've got defensively Klingman and Castle, both 7'2", 6'6" guys. Castle's a freshman, but he's had an impact. But they have that presence and that swagger and that confidence. And, I have an emotional pick in Purdue because I lived in Indiana for 3 years and I was on that campus a lot. And so it was one of those things where I would love to see Matt Painter win this thing. And again, Zach Edey is where everything happens. And I just think guards win championships. And the bigs, both these bigs are really good, playing really good defensively. He's always around 13, 15 a game, 7, 8 rebounds. He's that special guy that he stays out of foul trouble. He gets a guy like Klingen or others into foul trouble. He stays on the floor and plays 38 or 40 minutes. Then things get different. But Edey can't be a guy that gets 2 quick fouls and sits because their guard play is not good enough. This is a really good team now, but as Edey will be the chances for Purdue to win a championship. He plays well, stays out of foul trouble. All of a sudden, UConn for the first time, they've won UConn's won, I think, their last 5 games by about an average of 25 points, which is incredible. But I'm hoping it is a great game, and if Purdue could figure out a way to win it at the end, that'd be awesome. But I just think that UConn has the depth. They got the swagger. They've got both teams have great coaches, but I think UConn's in a situation where they just have better guys and more experienced guys that are having the ball in their hands and talking about guard play and guys who can not only make shots but make plays and make good plays for other teammates.
What do you think of Edey as an NBA guy?
Here's the thing. The NBA is a positionless league. And Zach Edey, we know what he is, who he is, and I watched him play 3 or 4 times, so I've not watched a ton of film on him. There's got to be a place in the league for him, and to have success, he's certainly shown at the collegiate level that he can do these things. But anytime you start talking about the NBA, you look at a guy like Jokic, who is a big human being, but I don't think that Zach right now has that skill set that maybe a guy like Jokic would have. But I gotta believe. He and Edey and Klingen are both going to be probably top 10 be lottery picks. And so you got to take a chance on Edey. I mean, he's a man. He's played there for a number of years. He's not a young player. He's not an 18-year-old or 19-year-old coming out as a freshman. But if I had the opportunity to take him, yeah, you absolutely want to take him because he's so different than a lot of guys. But like I said, there's a lot of 7-footers in 6'10", 6'11", 7-footers in the NBA who are playing on the perimeter. So how versatile he could be doing that, I don't see that in his game out there, but that's also not part of his game. You could probably help me. I'm not sure that I've ever seen him shoot a 3-point shot. I mean, he probably has maybe used it at times. But in the league now, they expect all the bigs to be able to shoot threes. And that's just kind of the nature of what the NBA is today. So, yeah, I would draft him. And I suspect he'll be a top 10 pick in the draft. But where that goes from there, who knows? He's got a chance to be a really good player in the league. But I think, again, too, even though he's an older guy in college, he's still got an opportunity to grow and develop and be maybe a more improved perimeter player, as well as all the things that he can do around the block. But it's just, the game is so fast in the league that you can't wait for guys to get there either and come down and set it up. It's a 24-second shot clock. It's not 35 where you can take your time, get into it. He's going to have to make some adjustments, but I wouldn't say that he doesn't have an opportunity to have an impact in the league, because I just think he does. We'll just see what happens down the road. But I hope that he plays well. I don't want to see guys in foul trouble early and have to sit and watch games. I want to watch the best players play for 40 minutes, and may the best team win. Hopefully, and I watched enough of the NC2A games that, for the most part, the officiating, they're going to let them play, and the officials know who these guys are. And they're a break. Not that they're going to break the rules, but they're going to give. There's going to be some there's not going to be a lot of quick whistles when it comes to guys like Klingon and Edey and others who need to be in the game and make this a special night for both teams.
Zach Edey, career from the 3-point line, 1 of 2. Took them both this year.
50%, man.
He is. He's a 50% 3-point shooter. Sell
Live and
that.
die with that.
Thank you for that stat.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Steve. It's what I do. I have very few marketable skills, but that's one. Steve, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, bud. See you guys.
DJ PK, Yak wants to get a qualifier right now. We got our Uinta Golf Masters giveaway underway. You know how it works. You get assigned a golfer, and then you sit and watch and wait and hope your golfer wins so you get fabulous prizes. We're giving away a driver this year with the Masters. So
essentially,
if whatever driver your golfer uses is the driver that you would win from Uinta Golf. Who is your golfer? Well, you have to get a qualifier, and we're going to do that right now. Be caller 12 right now at 801-575-ZONE, and you'd be assigned a golfer for the Uinta Golf Masters giveaway. It's all brought to you by Uinta Golf, simply the best golf stores in Utah since 1971.
Accessing.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
I will tell you that I am stomping my feet about this with BYU football. And, I'll take the heat because I get the pushback from coaches or BYU fans or whatever. I don't care. BYU has to do everything they've got to do to improve their pass rush. I don't want to hear about, the pressures were coming at a 34% clip. I need sacks. I will also tell people that BYU is taking large strides to make sure it doesn't happen again. Chad Kawahaha is over working with the defensive line. Gary Anderson is working with the defensive line. Sione Puak will stay on staff. Kelly Popinga is working with edges. People ask, what does BYU got to do to take the next step? Find a freaking defensive line that can play. Find a D-line that can ball.
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
And I want to personally thank Caitlin Clark for lifting up our sport. She carried a heavy load for our sport, and it just is not going to stop here on the collegiate tour. But when she is the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft, she's going to lift that league up as well. So Caitlin Clark, if you're out there, you are one of the GOATs of our games, and we appreciate you.
There's the head coach of the national champions, South Carolina Gamecocks. Don Staley praising Caitlin Clark. 38-0 for South Carolina. They've lost one game in 2 years. It was to Caitlin Clark in the national semifinals a year ago. They win the school's third title. Caitlin Clark goes for 30. She had 18 in the first quarter, but hard to keep that up, PK, and that was really the only place they could win a matchup with South Carolina, it seemed like, as if Caitlin Clark was going off.
Yeah. And so I guess for her, she was held in check, so to speak.
Now it's on to the men's title game tonight. UConn, Purdue, Zach Edey. Just keep throwing him the ball at the rim. The one thing UConn can't match up with is a 7'4" guy at the rim.
But I think they can, though. That's the point.
Well, then how does Purdue do this?
They don't.
Oh.
But Villanova beat Georgetown in some wild game that no one anticipated 30 or 40 years ago, so... You know, when you got the three-point line and a Johnny Juzang gets hot and it's 7 of 8.
Next thing you know.
Yeah.
Shocker.
Right. And so, but yeah, I think that Dan Hurley's group has enough to offset Edey. I don't think it will be just totally controlled completely, but they've got some bodies. Yeah, but it's a Caitlin Clark type thing where if he goes for 25 and 10, UConn's got enough to overcome that. I think they do.
Unless you're right, the Johnny Juzang factor. Somebody out there.
You probably need multiple.
Get hot from the perimeter.
Yeah.
Purdue was an amazing 20 of 28 from the three-point arc, and it was a shocker.
I mean, I don't really care who wins. I suppose I'm rooting for UConn because Hurley's a Jersey City guy. He's a Jersey guy.
There you go. Go back to your childhood roots.
Yeah. And so that means they're sarcastic. They love horse racing.
And they love their hoops.
They live on the edge.
On the edge.
Hurley swears in his press conferences.
We had Steve Cleveland on. If you want to talk, if you want to listen to some hoops, he was just on. Bob Harig, Sports Illustrated golf writer. He's got the book out, Drive, The Lasting Legacy of Tiger Woods. We talked to him earlier this morning. You can get those podcasts. Wherever you get your podcast, you can hear those interviews.
Yeah, I'm writing a book about my golf game. It's called Shank.
We can all write that book. Would you believe anybody who told you they couldn't write that book?
Duck hook.
Been there.
3-putt.
4-putt. The sequel.
Mullies galore.
For people just joining the show, Kentucky Wildcats coach John Calipari, it's not official, but he's expected to go to Arkansas for $8.5 million in incentives and a ton of money and $6 million in NIL money. Arkansas is going all in on basketball success. Arkansas poaches inside the SEC. Will Kentucky poach inside the SEC? You anticipate they will. But if they don't, there's a former Kentucky Wildcat coach into BYU who ought to get a call pretty quickly.
Yeah, and watch out for Billy Donovan, too. Obviously, he has experience at both levels and is a proven winner, and he might say enough of this. But, you know, you go back in the college game, and it's a lot different from when he was there. It's changed dramatically. I can argue that no sport has changed more dramatically from the time that Billy Donovan left college to go into the pro ranks, which has been 10-plus years by now, than college basketball.
Yes. Well, with our interview last week with Jared Calhoun talking about how, I mean, he got this job because of success at Youngstown State and how he built Youngstown State up over 7 years. And he said, taking this job on day one, the industry is completely different than Youngstown State day one. So I can't do here what I did there because everything has changed.
Right.
The transfer portal and NIL are two massive changes, and the combination of the two have made it a different gig.
And I think it's changed even more than college football. Because college football, one or two guys, unless you already have a ready-made team, and that's all you need is one or two guys.
Right, you need your star quarterback, your star defensive end.
Right. Whereas one or two dudes can make a significant difference. You just look at Alabama and the transfer from Northern Colorado. You just lighten it up, man, making a huge difference.
Nobody can do in football what Utah State did in basketball.
Yeah.
Now, even though Danny Sprinkle considered that, the stars really aligning and didn't think it could be repeated. Nonetheless, it was done.
No, it wouldn't surprise me if it's repeated.
But it would surprise you if it was done in football.
Correct. Yeah. You still need you got to recruit the dudes. The transfer portal is a big deal. But you look at all these teams that had 30, 40 transfers, and they stink because they needed 30, 40 transfers, right?
Maybe they needed 50 or 60.
Well, yeah, they need players.
Yeah.
And that's not to say like Colorado and ASU did that last year. We'll give it time, maybe. Because when they got it going, then they won't be getting 50, 60, 70% of the roster will be transfers. Where in basketball, you can have a number of transfers and make a significant difference. So the game has changed. So we'll see what Donovan does if he's interested. I'm surprised Steve Cleveland sort of basically said that he didn't think Pope would take the job. If I'm Pope and I'm offered that job,
gone.
Yeah. If nothing else, this is a business here. You go back and you say, Tom, they're giving me this much money. What are y'all going to do? Right? I mean, BYU isn't a calling for coach. And you can get all these blessings and all, but one of the blessings I really like is my bank account. That's a blessing.
But you don't really think it's going to get to that?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I think that it's a possibility. It's not outlandish.
I guess it's not outlandish. I think anyone who listens can really see
Mark
the
Pope
logic
can win
in it.
at Kentucky. I have no doubt.
Right. But you get why Oates is the hotter name and why he'd be the preferred candidate. And yeah, it's a lot of money, but is money really going to be an object to Kentucky? It's hard to believe it's going to be.
If they are
now, I guess the thing is,
in on a guy.
Oates decides, I really have a good thing going here at Alabama.
Right.
He takes the Kentucky number back to the Alabama AD and says, hey, I'll stay, but I need this much money, this many years, and guarantee me this NIL.
What can you give me? Yeah. That's a business, man. That's the way it works.
That's the way.
Utah State did it with Sprinkle, and it didn't work.
Right. Then it opens up. Yeah, but there's just a bigger gap between resources at Utah State and Washington.
I understand, but it still didn't
SEC
work.
schools. That's true.
The principle is the same. I understand the numbers are different. I get all that. But that's the way business works, man. So we'll see how it shakes out. And your statement in that they need to act quickly because of the transfer thing and all, I buy that 100%. So I suspect you look at the hirings, SC acted quickly.
When Enfield left.
Yeah.
They got to Musselman in Arkansas pretty quickly.
Right, so things
And really,
go.
Arkansas moved pretty quickly, too. They felt the same pressure.
And I want to see Oates go to Alabama because then they could transfer from Joby Hall to Nate Oates, and you could have Hall and Oates. And then when his wife walks in, Mrs. Oates, you're a rich girl.
Nice. DJ PK, when we come back, your feedback is next. Stay with us.
And it's all over almost here.
Don't go nowhere.
Coming up next, Jake and Ben, and Jake is on one, so stay tuned for the show. He just had us rolling in the break. Hilarious. You want to have fun watching Jazz basketball? You're going to have twice as much fun doing an hour postgame talking about the latest of the 12 straight losses. That'll put you in a mood.
Everybody wants this thing to end.
Yeah, right. All right. Question of the morning. Kentucky basketball looks like it's coming open. Do they come after Mark Pope? And the answers, so good, PK. Yeah, losing to Duquesne in the first round is something Kentucky wants to emulate? No. Jack. LOL, they're going to have to strike out on 10 other guys before they come for Pope.
I disagree with that, man.
Landon, I can almost guarantee Pope at least gets an interview.
Oh, I think he does.
If they have time for interviews.
Yeah, but
if they know their guy, go get their guy.
You are interviewing someone. You're not necessarily interviewing someone for right now.
I totally believe that. You could be interviewing them for 5 years down the road. You could be interviewing them to get some ideas, run stuff by people, have conversations, see what you might hear or learn that is interesting and intriguing that you can apply. This person is fairly high profile and doesn't want me to blurt their name out on the road, but he just looked at me once and said, He said took a business meeting, not in the world of sports, in the world of business, but they move between the two.
John Huntsman Sr.?
No. And
John Huntsman Jr.?
This person,
John Huntsman III?
This person wishes they had Huntsman money for sure. And he said, I'm taking a meeting. Oh, we're never going to do business with him. I'm just looking for ideas to steal.
Yeah.
Cold-hearted.
Jay Drew just posted Bet Online's odds. Scott Drew 1-1, Nate Oates 3-1, Richard Pitino, no, that's Rick Pitino's son, who's at New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Donovan is 4, Mark Pope is 5. Mark Pope at 10-1.
You can argue that
that's
list.
That's not outrageous odds.
You can argue that list, but that list is not outrageous at all.
Oh, no. And my guess is Drew over Oates, and Drew has a smaller buyout.
Yeah.
And maybe Oates is also thinking, man, I got it going here.
Why do I want to go?
Yeah.
I know what I got coming back. Why do I want to go into their outsized expectations? I'm at a football school and everybody loves me.
Yeah.
Because I'm overproducing for basketball. Their expectations aren't that high.
And the point is, it's kind of the opposite of what happens at Kentucky. Mark Stoops has the perfect job at Kentucky.
Right.
He operates in his own little world over there where 8 months of the year he doesn't really get cared about, makes a bunch of money, wins at a pretty good clip.
People show up on Saturday afternoon.
And this is Nate Oates' dream scenario. Is Bama's football team is always going to take the headlines, and he gets to do what he does on the other side.
But I get that. At the same time, you want to win it all. If you
want to win it all, you're more likely to do it at Kentucky
But
than
I can
Alabama.
remember speaking to a coach in this community that everybody would know if I mentioned his name.
Idaho State?
Yeah. And he says, that's a great job. I said, what? He said, they finish 8th every year, but they never fire the coach. You got job security. Okay. If you're thinking from that perspective, this was basketball.
And I think on top of that, if you had a couple of, 17-win seasons, they'd be overjoyed and you get another deal.
Mm-hmm.
To play that logic out.
Yeah.
Which I assume the coach had already played out in his mind, even if he didn't say it to you in that moment.
Right.
All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're all done. Jake and Ben are coming up next, right here on The Zone.